Hey everyone, welcome to the Growing with Fishes podcast. I'm Steve.
I'm Marty.
I'm Roger.
I'm Tommy J.
I'm Brain Grow.
I'm Marty.
I'm Roger.
Hog.
Got everybody? And Hogmaster. Yeah, he's muted there.
And our special guest tonight is
Special guest tonight is
Mr. GreenGenes,
awesome.
the original.
All
Mr.
right.
Yeah, we actually
from the old original overgrow.com, you guys. So if you were a big fan of overgrow.com, here's one of the old gurus from that website.
yep, and we'll get to him. We actually have a funny story about trying to get all of his social media links straightened out earlier today, so that'll be kind of funny.
Nice.
So
We're gonna have fun.
Yep. So we do this show every week to talk about aquaponic growing, as well as cannabis and permaculture issues, as well as guests, authors, YouTube people, and other people that have contributed to the industry, both aquaponic cannabis and permaculture. So thanks to everyone for joining us this week. If anyone's interested in connecting in person, we will be all at both Charlie, Ken, and I will all be up at the Aquaponic Association's conference in Portland next weekend. If anyone's interested, check that out on their website, aquaponicassociation.com. And that'll be really cool. We're going to go on Saturday night to the Northwest Cannabis Club. If anyone's interested or any of the DGC people are interested, we're going to meet up at the same place we had the cup at a couple weeks ago and have a little reunion and just hang out with some more aquaponic people and a few fewer DGC people, but as well. Thanks this week for Mr. GreenGenes for joining us. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what you do, and you're one of the more experienced people around, so why don't you give...
Yeah, I've been growing cannabis a long time, I guess. I grew it. First time I grew it was the first time I smoked it. I was 11 years old. I'm 60 now. My grandmother was a organic gardener, Swedish organic gardener, and my earliest memories are learning how to compost, turn the soil in the backyard, and so she was a seed saver and all that. I wish I could say I saved seeds from the first couple of crops that I grew, but I didn't. In fact, I don't even think we got the seeds were Colombian. This would have been 1969 maybe, I think, or 67, right? So so it was like Colombian seeds, right? And it was Massachusetts, so obviously they didn't finish flowering, but my grandmother was pretty brilliant. She yanked up one of the plants, this huge tree, and stuck it down in the basement with in a bucket of water, with the roots in a bucket of water, and kept it from freezing for the next, it was about one night before frost in October, Massachusetts, from freezing, and it grew another month maybe in the basement, and got a little bit of flowers. It was, and not fantastic, but it was my first introduction to growing cannabis, and so then I just kept on doing it. I guess around the mid 70s in New York, I really got cranking. I got a HID light. I got a metal halide light, and a friend of mine bought me an HPS light, and I started breeding. And right around that time, I guess I got the first indica genetics, was probably 1976, from friends who were studio musicians. And I started incorporating indica genetics and sativa genetics, which I'm sure quite a few other people, enthusiasts around the place, were doing it at the same time. I have a feeling Soma was doing right in my neighborhood around about the same time, maybe in the mid 70s. Clinton, pretty good idea he was there, but I'm not sure about that. I had to talk to him personally to ask him.
That's cool.
So yeah, and then on up, I moved to New York. I mean, let's see, I moved to California in 1990, and it's been great. Gotten to grow outdoors a couple times here in California, in Southern California. It's been really fantastic, and been breeding all along since then until now. I must have done hundreds of crops, although I guess for the last 10 or 15 years, I'm probably doing more of a continuous thing and just kind of, you know, and I grow in very small, I grow, you know, very, I flower everything in very small, you know, nothing bigger than a gallon, probably often in quarts. You know, even seedlings, I'll flower them in quart-sized pots, you know, because you got to get the most plants you can get in the smallest amount of space to get, you know, apply some selective pressure, you know. So whatever space you have, it doesn't matter whether it's large or it's small, you've still got to cram the plants in there. So I do things very small and I turn over quick. So a lot of my methods are probably applicable to anyone who just wants to closet grow or home growers, you know what I mean? And so I've been, I guess that's why I've had a lot of success online helping people, was that I already used, you know, fairly simple, straightforward organic methods, you know, my stuff from the nursery. It's not to say that I avoid the cannabis specific products. I don't at all. I go to the conventions and stuff, and I'm interested, and I try the stuff out. But
And then you go back to the nursery. Is
kind
that
of an
what you're saying?
organic. Huh? What's that?
And then you go back to the nursery after that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, you know, because I always mix my own soil mix, and I recycle it all the time. You know,
Yeah. I'm with you,
I
man.
recycle.
I'm with you. I don't.
A lot of things don't even get good until you get, you know, bone meal takes a while, man. You get, you know, you can't just, I mean, you get something out of bone meal right away, but you get a lot more. It pays back for, you know, a couple of years. I mean, you know what I've been really into lately is charcoal. Ooh, baby. Any of you guys read up on Terra
Biochar, right on.
Yeah, charcoal. Oh man. And of course,
Well,
any kind of. Sorry. Yeah.
I used orchid mix when I first started growing. I made my own mix, like you said, with bone meal and blood meal and all. I did the old recipe. And then I also was kind of into hydroponics. And when I did it, I found out and I looked at orchid mix and I said, wow, I studied South African hydroponics where they were using sawdust and stuff. And it had wood chips and charcoal and everything in it. And I said, yeah. And it turned out it really grew some good plants.
Yeah, yeah. Charcoal, I think it really keeps the mix sweet, and it makes it possible to put the pots in a really deep runout trays. You know, so when plants get root bound, which of course cannabis plants do right away. Let's face it, they do in 1 week, right?
Yeah.
So I use bowls, you know, plastic bowls that hold a lot of runoff and allow the plant to sit in the runoff for a long time. And I think things like charcoal help to keep the soil sweet, even if there's a lot of nutrient there as well. You know what I mean? So you don't get like a fermentation of the soil kind of. You get a nice, you know, things. It's almost like it's like semi-hydroponic. And I use a lot of drainage too. I'll use sand and, you know, rocks and kitty litter. You know, like any kind of zeolite clay like that shit. What's that stuff? AfroTurf. No, turf face. Like that. Like, and now, you know, you can get all the clay, you know, comes in the balls even, you know, what is that stuff called? Hydroton. Expanded clay. Yeah, all those things. You know, because that's what was in those Brazilian soils, you know, there in the Amazon and the terra preta that they've been looking at lately is pretty much, which apparently stays in the soil for thousands of years and doesn't break down. It's pretty much, you know, you're basically sequestering carbon in such a way that it's going to stay there for a really long time. and that in the combination of the clay, you know, means maybe those two things are like, maybe we have these old agricultural skills that used to be better than than what we're looking at. I mean, we always think, oh, we're so superior now, we have so much better scientific skills. I mean, yeah, we do, you know, in many ways, but some ways there could have been some good old skills too, you know.
Well, they grew food thousands of years ago, and for thousands of years.
Yes.
You know.
A lot of food too. Those guys were they had a very, very dense population of people there.
Yeah, I think a lot of people. I think a lot of people think that just because it was a long time ago, it wasn't a lot of people that they fed. You know, that's just not. You know, that's not the case. Like when you look at some population
in these
density,
places,
it's crazy.
These places, there was great density, right? Exactly. There was also a situation of great density somewhere there in the Nile Basin, right? At some point. I don't know if that had anything to do with those other things. The Terra Preta, that's a South American thing, as far as I know. But
yeah.
But there have been other extremely dense, agriculturally based populations in the past that when we look at and we go, holy shit, how did they grow that much food? You know.
Well, here's a funny thing. Am I on?
Yeah. I can hear you.
Here's a funny thing. When you talked about the charcoal being, you know, captured into the soil and stuff. Well, I was in Pennsylvania, and we know what kind of crops they grow corn-wise and stuff in Pennsylvania. I mean, it's just phenomenal when they have the season. But if you run a trowel through that land up there, you'll dig up charcoal. You'll see charcoal, like ball sizes of charcoal.
And it's charcoal?
In the clay.
Wood charcoal?
Yep. No, natural charcoal.
Coal.
Old coal. It's regular coal.
But it's you got to think about it in the same respect what you were saying a minute ago. I just had to throw that in there. It's kind of interesting. Expanded clay to me is the best medium out there, you know. If you're gonna, you know, to me, that's the ultimate medium. It's a little more expensive, but once you got it, you can clean it and reuse it and mix it with Pro Mix or mix your own thing with it, and it aerates it better and holds moisture at the same time.
I feel like those things are kind of like organic batteries. I feel like they are both storage. You know, we know charcoal absorbs organic stuff. I mean, we use it for filtration and all kinds of things like that. And I think it kind of can, you know, act as a battery. Both of them, and the clay too, you know, can store various kinds of biological things, you know,
and minerals
there, and so it's ready to be used, and you know, doesn't piss things off, and you know, it's not like, you know, doesn't make beer in the soil, you know, it doesn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's basically exactly how it works, and there's plenty of research that supports exactly what you're talking about, and that's why I started using it. I actually even use biochar in my aquaponic media beds as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you know.
Is that your second? Is that your other zone? Is that your soil root zone you're talking about using in Braingrow?
No, I have it actually broken into chunks. Like you can actually, you can buy biochar like anything else on Amazon, and you'll buy it in a powderized form. But I make my own biochar, and instead of breaking it all the way down to the powder, I leave it into, you know, like dime-sized chunks, slightly larger chunks than that, and mix it in with the hydrogen and the grow stones and stuff like that for my media beds.
Big chunks are good.
The problem with it in an aquaponic media bed is that it'll break down within 6 months to a year, usually, into kind of a mushier material, which is why you're far better off putting it in your pots or in your soil layer when you're doing it, just so that it's a little contained. And if it does get a little messy, you can, you know, compost it back into your soil layer and keep it kind of contained rather than having it. I've had a few issues with it ending up in the pumps occasionally, not often, but every once in a blue moon. But we do things a little bit different, so.
Yeah, but
that's my system tends to stay pretty clean.
Yep.
Well, see, you're very diligent too. See, it's a difference between due diligence. We know that you're super diligent because you do everything organically, completely with your ferments and your labs and all, where other people are going to be, if they're lazy, what Steve said could really become an issue. You know, as he said, if you're not really diligent keeping up with it.
Not just lazy. Cannabis grows fast as hell, dude.
Yep.
Oh, really?
Fuck, sometimes you got to bring a machete in there with you, you know? You got to.
Right.
That grows so fast.
I mean, usually at the
like
rate that I'm
the
pulling out the
flowers.
root balls and stuff, it doesn't really become an issue because I'm regularly changing out the media when I pull out a root ball for harvest anyway. So
that was my
I will
point.
say this.
Exactly.
I will say this that I have grown. So I did a 4-acre experiment with biochar, with industrial hemp. We did a half acre at 5% of the soil, and a 0% control, half acre at 3%, 0% control, half acre at 1%, and a half acre control, and on 4 acres. And then we did a whole acre on just normal. And then the as far as the hemp goes, it didn't make a whole lot of difference, but that was strictly industrial hemp, not cannabis, medical cannabis anyway. And then it did make a huge difference in how the other plants, such as the weeds and stuff, grew. But as far as our final harvest on the hemp, it didn't seem to make much of a yield difference, regardless of what percentage. But again, that was only between 5, 3, and 1%, and that was a one-time
you have to
experiment.
measure that like multiple times. Like part of the benefit of it is it stays for so long.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was fixing to say.
Well.
You can use a lot too. Yeah, I found you can use a lot, but also it's funny what you said about the hemp, because I think one of the things I've noticed about, as far as just sort of noticing what's going on when you're using the charcoal, it seems to really produce very strong stems. I noticed that plants achieve their genetic potential for their stem strength very easily when there's a lot of charcoal in the I don't know whether it's supplying a nutrient or making something available or keeping a fungus alive. I mean, I put composted matter and stuff like that in my mix as well, so it's probably got live stuff of who knows what in there, So I couldn't say, but I do think the charcoal makes the stem strong. It's funny that you say about the hemp. I was gonna, because when you said that, I was gonna say, oh, I bet the charcoal made the hemp crop bigger, but I guess not. Maybe it was too smaller quantities.
That was one season across the first year. It might dramatically change the microbiology after subsequent years as well. So that was not the best test, but that was just
check it out. I was making activated charcoal. So and this is pretty funny. This is based on the idea of of green manure, right? Green instead of feeding the animal and using the animal waste on the field, just to grow the alfalfa or something and turn the alfalfa straight in and get a whole bunch more nitrogen than you would if you passed it through the animal. So what about the idea of doing that in aquaponics? So I made a big biofilter in the backyard instead of a tank. I filled the tub up with gravel and made the biofilter basically the entire depth of the big old tub, and a circulation system PVC thing on the bottom and everything. And I put a lot of organic matter in there, like chicken manure and stuff like that. And at first, initially, of course, it was really high in ammonia. But after working in the biofilter for a while, the ammonia got transferred to nitrates and nitrites, right? And you could take this stuff, and it was a really good, fertilizer. You could, dilute it with water or whatever, and use it on your plants, and it's fantastic. But one day I got this wild idea, and I took a bunch of the charcoal, the wood charcoal, and threw it into the top of the biofilter. And it took a long time. It took about 2 weeks, but after a while it absorbed a bunch of, probably mostly water, but maybe some of the stuff from there, and and after a while the charcoal all sank. So I took that charcoal that was now pretty waterlogged, and that's another thing. If you add dry charcoal to soil, it's probably going to suck up a lot of water. You know what I mean? I noticed when I add it to a potting mix, you got to be really careful to let the water soak back up from the bottom, when you pot something freshly in it, because the rest of the mix might be absorbing water, but the charcoal is maybe a little bit more hydrophobic or something. I'm not sure. I'm just guessing. And maybe it's only my water, maybe my high pH. We have hard water here. So, what was I going with that? Charcoal.
Well, let me ask you something.
Activating your system.
Yeah, activated charcoal, right, or deactivated charcoal. So anyway, the charcoal filled up with water. Thank you. Charcoal filled up. You guys are awesome. Filled up with, possibly a really highly nutritional mix with a lot of nitrates and nitrates. You know what I mean? So you can make this big old biofilter, and you can throw so much crap in there that fish wouldn't be able to live in it. It's too, even your tilapia would be pissed off. I love aquaculture. I'm not trying to blow by it.
Hey, Steve, isn't that pretty much what they do with bioponics? Is that not a similar method of what they do with that?
The biggest difference with the bioponics is that they have kind of they call it a marsh filter, where they have, wetland plants and sometimes, lava rock or charcoal or other stuff. So that's kind
it's
of
just with the bio straight, whatever it is for the stuff to live on. You're just making a biofilter essentially. If you keep on circulating the water through this biofilter. And by the way, biofilters are amazing in the reservoir if you're a hydroponic grower. I've convinced a number of growers around here and even people online, to make a simple one and drop it in the bottom of the res. It's really amazing. I don't think it eats a significant amount of the fertilizer out of the system, but it definitely cleans out protein scums. It's beautiful. It cleans out protein scums and, prevents pH swings quite a bit. Keeps that sudden swing to acid or whatever it is from some new protein stuff falling off. Wow, it's beautiful. What a color, huh? Look at
that. Which one? This one over here?
We're watching Marty's show now. We were listening to you, and we said, "Yep."
Sorry.
Look at Marty's show.
And then I got distracted again. What am I talking about now?
We have fun on this show, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Impressive, Marty. Very nice, buddy. Very nice. I'm impressed.
I was trying to distract him, so it worked.
Oh, well, I'm talking too long, man. You guys interrupt me. Shit, holy shit.
No, we love it, man. That's what we invite people on here for, is to just, give them a chance to talk about what they do and what they think, and we all get ideas. And, it's great when they love. We talked about, biochar, like Brain Growth talked about it a number of times on here. So it's cool to, get new ideas and reinforce old ones. So we appreciate it when people geek out. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, growing, is a very wide open subject. There's so many different ways to grow. I mean, all different kinds of plants. Cannabis is amazingly, resilient, and I think that's one of its. If it has any problems, actually, it's one of the things that leads to one of its problems, which is that a lot of times I figured out helping diagnosing problems online, which is what you usually end up doing, is down in the trenches diagnosing problems, is that very often when cannabis shows some kind of symptom, it's already got two problems, or it's taken two insults by that time, maybe even more. Because very often the first insult, the first kind of thing that wasn't too cool, doesn't even make it show anything, you know what I mean? And second, so it's because it's kind of tough. So that makes diagnosis really difficult. It's kind of like your car, and you don't know whether it's gas or electric. You know what I mean? It could be both. You know, they're combined. It's like, who can figure out what it is? So I think that's one of the problems. I think that's one of the main things that makes the other thing, the only really thing that makes cannabis difficult is that it just grows so fucking fast. It is so high energy. It uses so much water that people very often can't keep up, especially in containers, in growing in a soil mix, which is essentially probably in a way the easiest way, but very difficult in the sense of keeping up with the watering, because unless you take a little tiny plant and put it in a gigantic pot, you know, if otherwise you're repotting every single week, and the plant grows, doubles in size, and so just the amount of people often aren't ready for the work. They don't understand how quick cannabis is going to grow. So that's really the
say
two
that.
things.
It's funny you say that.
About it too. Go ahead, Hog.
It's funny
Sorry.
he says that while I'm filling up gallon jugs.
Yeah, the water, man. It's all about water.
Yeah, it's like I bought water at first. I bought water myself at first, and 2.5. And after that, I said, "The hell with this! I'm getting an RO unit." You know, I had a well, and after I toted about 10 2.5 gallon jugs about 3 weeks in a row, I was done buying distilled water. That was the end of that. Bought an RO filter, and here we are today. You know. Sorry, David. Go on, buddy. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I'm still filling jugs. I just thought it was funny that he mentioned that right at the same time I was doing it.
Hey, are you going to show us your jugs, or can we not do that on YouTube? Yeah.
Jugs.
Very nice. They like it when you do that sometimes. You gotta make sure they're wet.
Hold those jugs up there, and I'll go. I'll motorboat them.
That would
Marty,
take
I don't think you got cheated on them. I don't think you got cheated on them little blue cheap ass lights, man. What I just saw, it doesn't look like you got cheated at all on that side. You know.
Yeah, they're not bad. I mean, you can definitely tell the difference in the two lights, but it's not like you don't get anything. You know.
Well, you can probably tell a lot better, if you're right there. I mean, they all. But what I'm saying is, they look like they're really well developed, and you're getting some really nice. Are they not dense? Are they not dense on the? I know those are dense. I can tell. You can tell, but on the blue side.
Well, here, let me give you an example. So this bud right here, okay, this is from this side over here, right? So that's from the other plant. So if I hold this up right next to it, give you an idea of how thick it is, and it's thick and tight. There's no light getting through it or anything, right? But if you come over here, and I hold it up next to, like, say, this one that's right under the light, you can see the size difference pretty easy. And you can tell on a couple of these, they're not quite as tight. So, like, right through there, you see how you can see light through there?
Oh, okay. I see what you're trying to say. Yeah. Well, that's what I was asking, if you had the density on that side. So you're saying you do not have the density on the cheap lights, but even though they look really nice and full, they're not as dense.
Yeah, they're definitely not as dense. So they're not as tight, and they're probably not as big, but they definitely still are great. I think. I mean, it's not like you. For what I paid for the lights, which I think was like $120 each. Two of them over this size. I'm not complaining about the yield at all.
No, cool.
For what I paid for the lights.
That's cool. Sorry, Mr. GreenGene. This is kind of like an ongoing saga, and he's in that getting in the flower, and we've had this light thing going on. When you catch up with the podcast, you'll know what we're talking about.
So this was supposed to be a side-by-side, but I mislabeled one of the clones. So this one over here is not the same strain as that one over there. So it's kind of a failed side-by-side, but we're still trying to draw conclusions, I guess. So that's how we got sidetracked into that.
And that's where you send all complaints about the show.
Right now, the leading candidate is Gorilla Glue. So I got the guy that I got all of the cuts from. There's like 6 different ones that it could be, but it's been narrowed down to pretty much gorilla glue based on the way it smells and the way it's like chunky and buddy the way it is.
You
So
didn't label.
it's really good. I just smoked some. Oh, there you go. Little sample. Little sample.
You're supposed to label.
I know. Actually, I did label.
Glad.
I just labeled it incorrectly. So, hey,
That's
it
why
had
I
a
use
label.
the-
It
that's
just
why
had
I
a
do that.
When that happens,
I label
you
and
get
then
the flower
I
and you're like, this isn't what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, no, it was pretty evident like a week into flower, and this one was still vegging, and like that one over there was like already popping flowers. So I knew it pretty soon into flower. I was like, something is just not right here, and you can see how much more grown up it is over the other one. Like that one dropped into flower like right away. This one kept on vegging, and I was like, oh, something's not right here. And sure enough, definitely different. Like this one over here is obviously shishka berry. That's what it's supposed to be, right? Shishka berry is
Yeah.
like super purpley and flowers fast and all that.
Yeah.
So, and there's no
Yeah.
no purple in this
The
at all.
shape of those buds. The shape of those buds too.
Yeah,
That's that.
totally different. So, I mean, I guess the only upside is that a couple of these buds did grow over far enough to where you can see what this plant looks like under the other light. Like even on this one here, which is more of like a side nug, you can see how it's tight and thicker. You can't see any light through there, and so you can definitely tell the difference. This is consuming more watts alone than these two are combined. So it's supposed to do better. I mean, and I do think it does. But to what Roger was saying, it's not like it might do better, but it's not like this is a slouch for what I paid for it. Considering that light costs $1,500 and these two lights cost $120 each, I still think it's a tough comparison. But for those people that are looking for the top quality stuff, it definitely produces a higher quality, thicker buds, more dense, all the stuff you want. If you want to be able to sell it, I mean, I would definitely say this bud over here would be easier to sell than this bud over here, even when it finishes. Like this will probably go like a week longer because it started later. So it is still has more time to grow together. But in the end, I still think that's going to be a more sellable product. So whatever value you want to put on that, I guess, is sort of up to you. But that would be my observation so far. Hopefully, we'll reboot this, and I think I'll just get clones from somebody else, so I know that they're the same ones, and we'll put them in here and make sure they're labeled correctly, and hopefully do all this again. But obviously, that takes time, and these still have to finish. So we'll see how that goes.
And at the new house.
At the new house, that's right. So all this is torn up, like getting ready to get set up. So like normally down here in the beds, I would have like greens and herbs and stuff, but all that stuff has been pulled out. But normally I have like companion plants in there that take up nitrogen out of the system when I'm in flower. So, and I normally have more plants in here too. Normally I do one on each end of the bed. So I do one pot closer and one farther back. But this is supposed to be just the 2 plants side by side.
Two plants. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool for 2 plants. See, everybody out there, you don't need 25 plants.
Now, I would much rather have 25 plants, but because of all the bullshit that's going on,
Yeah,
right now I can only have 4 living plants right here because while I'm in the process of moving, I transferred my grow site to my buddy's house where he's growing my outdoor plants for me. So I can have my 4 recreational plants here because as of January 1st, you won't be able to do recreational and medical at the same place. So now I'm going to be moved in and to the new place and probably get all that transferred back over by then. But for right now, the best thing for me to do was to let him grow my 6 plants outside. I could keep growing my 4 recreational plants inside here. So right now I have 2 flowering plants and I have 2 plants in veg. And that's my 4 total living cannabis plants that you can have as recreational. So To all you cops watching, I'm counting all my plants and you can see them all, so fuck you.
Actually, I had a fun bullshit with the cops today. I was moving out of where I was living. I was temporarily living in this other place, and this lady called the cops on me because, like, the neighbor called the cops on me because I had like brought some shit outside. Like, I had like I don't know, it was like an ounce or two of weed, but like you could clearly see it through the clear bag. So the cops show up, and I'm like, yeah, here's my med card. I can have like 4 pounds or 6 pounds or whatever the fuck the medical thing is. It's like an ounce and a half. And they're like, why were we called? Like, they were just like, this is stupid, and they just left. It was ridiculous. It was like they came, they didn't even take my ID. It was like, okay, you people are stupid, we're leaving. It's fucking dumb.
It's a waste of their
Anyways.
time. I could understand why they would be frustrated.
Yeah, they were more
You're up in
annoyed
the
that they
Bay
had to
Area,
show up.
right?
Yeah, I'm in the Bay Area. Like,
You're
they're not
up in-
gonna do shit for an ounce and a half. They're just like, what the fuck? Especially
And
for
the
someone
thing
with a medical license with a 96 plant count. Like, they're really not gonna give a fuck.
He's one of the good guys up there. Even the city council people wind up coming and taking
Yeah.
his classes and everything because
We
he's
literally
one
had,
of the good guys.
yeah,
you know?
we literally had the city council. Well, not the city council. We had representatives from the city council at the class I taught this.
This would be a good place to come and learn some stuff.
Yeah, so like,
This would be a very smart place for a politician to come to.
yeah, so like I it was very, almost comical that she bothered because it was like, listen, like, this is dumb. Like, I literally just had the mayor and a couple of the people in my class over the weekend. You're gonna go call the cops on me because of like an ounce? You're fucking dumb. Like, what are you doing? Anyways, it was just goofy and it was funny, and I wanted to get a good laugh out of that because I thought you'd all get a kick out of that.
Yeah, that is dumb. And it's a waste of their
You
time.
live
I
and
can
you learn.
understand why the cops get frustrated. Like, what's the
Yeah.
point of that? You
Well,
know,
you know
like,
what it is? Old people trying to be dramatic for the sake of being dramatic.
well, trust me, I'm moving because of an old guy that wants to be dramatic. So
Exactly.
Yeah,
You're moving
resemble
for the
that.
same.
I'm
You know?
doesn't surprise me
funny.
at all.
It's funny, Marty. Like, you're moving next month. I just had to move. It's all funny. Universes and synchronicities.
Well,
Us
how
older
we got
guys,
anybody-
yeah.
No.
So,
We got anybody down in chat that wanted to ask Mr. GreenGene any kind of
I had a couple of questions. So, what's some advice you have for someone looking to get into breeding? Say there's a lot of people out there, or a lot of people watching this show that have never done a breeding program before, don't really understand what's entailed. Do you want to maybe touch on that a little bit and touch on
Yeah.
maybe a couple of
Yeah.
pointers, maybe things you've learned along the way? Because I know that's something you're extremely experienced on and can talk very much on.
These days, it's really a good time to breed cannabis because almost anything you get comes from a pretty long line of good plants. There isn't a lot of recently in-crossed something that has a fairly low percentage. Like recently, my friend is from South Africa, and he brought me some seeds of Durban poison. And I made a mix of that with something. And the first one of the F1 plants, is fantastic. It's really fabulous. But it would, it'd be very difficult to sort of fix its traits and stuff like that. And if you were to keep on breeding it, and there's a pretty good likelihood that some of the plants would be kind of low in THC because the mother plant, that Durban poison plant, was probably, I don't know, I want to say maybe 9% or 10% or 11%, something like that. It was pretty, it would probably considered to be a kind of a weak sativa, like a landrace sativa. But boy, what a beautiful plant, a really gorgeous plant. But anyways, what I was saying about that is that something like that, breed it and everything, for subsequent generations, you might have some, some hay, it might be a little bit complicated breeding and using some kind of land race like that. But a lot of genetics that you get a hold of these days, most stuff that you get, most plants, most clones and everything, come from a long line of good genetics. You know what I mean? They come from they have a pedigree already behind them. So a male from any seed with a female from any seed batch virtually is probably gonna, make pretty nice results. Make pretty good results. I always you can go a lot deeper into it. It's generally good to use a couple of males, at least as many males as as females that you think are good. So if maybe roughly 30% of the females are good, you might want to use roughly 30% of the males in your cross or something like that. Am I getting too technical? You're probably thinking about how to collect pollen and stuff like that.
Well, we had a quick question.
Like I'm just going on to selection and stuff. What the fuck, right?
Oh, no. Well, I'd love to hear a little bit about that in a second.
I'm just saying that nowadays it's quite safe for anybody to, I wouldn't call anybody an amateur anymore, I mean, back in the day, I think it was a little bit more difficult when we were first making a lot of the indica and sativa crosses. It was easy to breed yourself into a corner. And
I think what you're trying to say is that, the genetics are much more stable now.
Well, not only more, I don't necessarily mean more stable. I don't actually mean that. What I mean is the traits, whatever variation of traits that you're going to get from making various crosses of anything that comes to mind that you think might be really cool, those variations won't necessarily include hay or shitty plants with low THC, plants that you wouldn't want to smoke at all. So in other words, what I'm saying is you won't be like super disappointed with your results, and you'll be able to do fairly well with fairly smaller numbers as well, meaning growing out 25 females. Think about this, they're all really good. They're all really different. Supposing it's an F2, which you've created to give you a lot of variation, a whole lot of breakdown, showing sides of the two things you made. And but both sides are fabulous, and you get all these different incredible combinations of infinite numbers of possibilities, many beautiful. So every single plant, that's like an orchid grow, is what I say. They're all beautiful. They're going to be incredible. Good luck choosing a good one. That's why I don't grow out 100. Don't invite me to the testing session. Whew.
We had a question from chat. He says, Larry says, what does landrace mean? And I know what that means, but do you want to describe a little bit to that for people out there who don't know?
It just means something that, and it's a regular term from horticulture too. It's not a cannabis specific term. It just means something which is local to that area, which is genetically, like a lot of sativas in the world now are still available in their pure sort of land race.
Well,
the way they were originally.
I think the best way to describe landrace is like unhybridized. It means it's the original.
Yes, unhybridized. Open pollinated is another term as well. I would say open pollinated means basically you can save seeds from all of them. It's a true strain. It's something that relatively true, and it does that because everyone's been just growing it generation after generation in that area and saving the seeds from that. So you have you have wonderful land races from Mexico. Those are very influential in our California cannabis local area, Northern California, I think, and probably Vietnamese and things like that. So there's, land races from all over the world that have contributed, that have been mixed in. But what I'm saying is that nowadays, you don't really find too much stuff of sort of low potency, of weak things. So most things that you cross, you won't have a lot of disappointing results. It'll be good. And I'll tell you what, when you cross two things that are really distantly, really unrelated, I think the biggest thing is it's important to choose the two individuals. And so in that case, like having a male that has been progeny tested, that kicks the good traits that you want it to do. Using that in a cross with something completely unrelated is probably generally a good idea. But you don't have to
What
go. You don't have to go that way, because if the male had good sisters, if his sisters were all good, then he's probably good too. You know. And I'm
what are
saying
some
that.
of what are some of
Sorry,
the
these days.
desirable traits for males? I know a lot of people haven't had a chance to breed lots of males. So what are some things that are more desirable for male genetics for people that haven't bred a lot of males?
You can see a lot of things are going to be obvious, like they're going to be related to the larger number of plants that you have, larger number of selection you have, the more you're going to see traits that are shared between the males and the female, the brothers and their sisters. So and of course, the things that you can obviously select males for are structural traits, vigor, general vigor, plants that are nice and big,
Right.
that are aggressive growing, you know, they're happy about life, and any structural traits that you see that relate to the sisters that you think are the good ones too. So you'll be able to see some things like will be obvious, like color. You also can smell things on males' leaves. You can rub their leaves, especially if you go in real clean, you know, if you haven't smoked anything or whatever, and, you know, just maybe, I don't know, eat what is that stuff you eat when you're having sushi, ginger or something like that, and you can, you know, and then smell the leaves, and you'll be able to smell smells on male plants. And if you ever wash plants, if you're ever doing any dipping to control your mites and things like that, just washing them upside down, directly dipping them in water, that was a great, you know, fantastic and easy way, mechanical way to fight mites. You can get a really good smell off of plants right after you've dipped them, right after you take them out of the water.
Yeah.
Give off a beautiful smell, the males and females. So that's a good time to judge males too, is right after you've given them a bath, or if you just, you know, spray them down or whatever. Or just talk to them, breathe on them, then they smell. But yeah,
What
am I
about
making any
flower?
sense? What?
Yeah. What about flower structure, especially?
Yeah, it's hard to judge that in males. It's hard to judge that in males, but obviously in females, you're going to see a lot of things like that. And these days, a lot of people are doing a lot more super cropping and bending and stuff like that. So plants with much shorter internodes and flexible stems that can be easily bent. That's really nice. You know, and bushy plants with a lot of leaves. I know the trimmers hate that shit, but you know, because you can bend them a lot. You know, because you can. I mean, because you can get, if you can get a lot of light down in there, then you've got a lot of bud engines, and you can get a lot of yield that way. You know, so
Yeah.
so genetic considerations for yield. Let's see.
Well, yeah, we got to ask the man some
Another,
questions or something.
no. We
Yeah,
got
I don't know what to say.
another person.
So much. You know, looking at traits is incredible, and it takes a long time, you know, and it's always, you know, and what I've noticed is that, especially when people are consuming, everyone has such a different experience. You know, I've long ago stopped off really trying to create cannabis in my own, you know, for my own goals. I'm much more kind of interested in what other people, I like other people's descriptions of how something tastes, you know, how something smells. To discuss those things when you're sharing it with them, you know, to have people's input is really a fantastic way to do selective breeding. To breed, it's much more than my own, than all the stuff I could ever think up. You know what I mean? The stuff the kind of cannabis, the kind of strains that other people turn me on to. When people come to me, my friends, and say, "Oh, Doug, you know, you've got to try this." Ooh, was I not supposed to say my name? You've got to try this, you know, this strain. And I, you know, I like having my mind expanded, you know what I mean, in those areas. I don't think I know a lot about observation of traits and about the growing of the plant and all those kinds of things. And I think breeding is very hardcore. The pedigree is as hard as it gets, you know. It's just it's all about labeling, you know, labeling and labeling for years and years and years.
Well, that
But
back to what I was saying
traits.
earlier about the genetics being stable. I was
Yes.
trying to give you a break too, because you were, it seemed like you were.
Yes, I know. Talking myself into a corner again. I know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I wanted to bring up when I said about the genetics being stable. And then you kind of said, well, no, but then you came back to the fact that it's about that the genetics are stable and the quality of the genetics are so good now. When you buy those genetics from a quality seed bank, that's what you're saying. You get those 2 different quality genetics from an excellent seed bank. So you're going to not be disappointed if you are capable of breeding,
Yes.
viable.
Yes.
Cannabis
Yes.
isn't stable in like the traditional agricultural
Sense
description.
anyways. You don't really want it to be stable. Take a clone, you know. The F1, and I learned this lesson with with this one plant, this cross with the Durban poison and this other stuff, which was probably Jack Herrera or something, some seeds a friend of mine gave me from Germany, which was a really other nice, beautiful sativa. So this plant, and you know, I learned that right away. As soon as I saw that plant, I realized, God, I haven't seen a plant like that in 40 years. I'm never going to see another plant like that. And as a breeder, I was immediately interested, of course, in breeding it, and I want to see what's down the next gen. And in fact, I did breed it. I even had its brother. I fooled around with it for a while, but it turned out to be an uncrackable, an uncrackable puzzle, really, to actually create a stable strain like that F1 hybrid would have been. And I kind of had a feeling along in the beginning that it wouldn't really happen. So the lesson to me there was clone, dude. You know, Mr. GreenGenes, who's always looking down the next generation, always wants to see, always wants to breed. What's down here? What's up next? I was taught that lesson. This plant, obviously, not going to see it again. You know what I mean? It's an F1. It's a hybrid between these 2 vastly unrelated strains, and it doesn't really. It'll throw some of its traits pretty well, but not everything. And also there's a thing called heterosis. Heterosis is basically hybrid vigor, which is what they do with a lot of commercial vegetables. Spinach and squash and stuff like that generally are hybridized. And so it's that first generation that has that heterosis. And that's exactly what this plant is. That's why it taught me that lesson. If you want stability, clones, you know. The only thing is it's hard to
going for, right? Like once you have what you want, then you can clone it out. Is that?
Yes, especially nowadays. So that's all you need to do as the breeder.
Yeah. So
you have this dream, and what I advise is really thinking it out. I think anybody can do it now. It's not special. It's not special stuff. And what you do really is decide what are the qualities that you would really like. The trick is deciding on those 2 things to make the initial cross, choosing a single male and a single female. You don't really have to. You could choose a couple. You can choose multiple ones if you want. That'll make it a lot more complicated, a lot more difficult. But you can just go with a single male and a single female, because a lot of times you'll have just females will be clones. They'll be clones that you have on hand. You have this one, you love the traits of that. Get some seeds of something, use a male of that's a male of a brother of one of the sisters, that they have the trait that you want to combine with this one. And basically, as long as you keep everything in mind, along the way, by 2 or 3 generations, they say 6 to 7 generations of inbreeding to make a strain. But immediately in the first generation, you're going to have wonderful plants that you're going to want to clone. Perfect plants for keeping as fabulous as your signature. You'll have your brand right there. There you go. That's how to make your brand cannabis right there. As long as you keep it in mind throughout the cross, and if you don't get what you wanted in the first, go to the second generation, cross a bunch of the males and females. I say a pretty good percentage if you don't get what you want, and go to the second generation. Then you'll really have some fun. Grow those babies out.
Well, your combinations start increasing, right? Because you
Yes.
have a lot more partners, which means there's a lot more matches, which means you have a lot more phenols to test.
Yes, in the F1 there'll be generally a lot more homogeneous. It will be more homogeneous. There'll be more similarities, especially if the two strains are pretty unrelated. You'll see a mixture of traits almost completely within each plant. But then you go to the F2 by crossing brothers and sisters, and you'll see a big breakdown of a whole bunch of different traits. And that's when things get really fun, especially nowadays. That's what I say is I call that an orchid grow. And I would caution against any more than 30 females or whatever to choose between. Because holy moly, good luck with that. You'll narrow it down to 5, 6 nice ones. It'll take you months, man.
It's good to be the king. I guess.
Don't invite me over. Ooh, it'd be horrible testing. It'd be just brutal testing session.
What are you gonna do?
I like number 23, man. Was that number 23? Whew. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's how you know when someone's very meticulous and accurate and highly skilled is when they're, doing just like you were talking about.
Well, you have to. I'm not really in other ways. If you saw I'm in a closet. I'm very ghetto. I'm very loose about growing. I'm not really ghetto, but I mean, I grow anything. I compost in the backyard. But about breeding, my grandmother, she was my teacher. So.
Me too. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah.
So, what other any other advice you have for people maybe that are just getting started, trying to get started with breeding cannabis, or
don't be really afraid of things. Don't be afraid of males. Pollen fear is excessive. The thing about hermaphrodites and people getting accidental pollination in the grow rooms. That's a big issue. And I think a lot of times it's not as much of a problem if you don't have direct fans on the plants. And I'm not a big believer in direct fans anyways. And I know some rooms, man, when the room gets totally packed, when you need that machete and you can't even back around the wall. There's too many lights in that room anyways, but that it's
I love it.
right. It's too
many lights.
Hey, move in here,
Get it, I'm going against the wall.
But I know, but I think that still you don't really need to directly blow fans directly on plants. The whole idea of direct, and I know some people with it strengthening the stems. Believe me, I think the charcoal or the whatever mix. If you're been recycling your soil mix, I bet you don't have weak stems. Or if you do, can do a lot with genetics. There's some long, delicate sativa genetics that just sometimes are not going to be that happy. And supposing it's got kind of woody stems, and that actually is an indica trait, which means they can kind of snap easily. So supposing they're long and frondy and there's long internodes and the stems are kind of woody, kind of indica, kind of mini mixed up traits. I'm just imagining a genetic disaster for stem situation. But, what was I saying? I was saying originally that about...
You could have, you were talking about the fact that you had hermaphrodites where you went.
Oh, yes, if you had hermaphrodites. don't blow the direct fans on them. You know what I mean? You know, and I really think, you know, I've had some plants that for years that lately, you know, having clones that I've been keeping for years that I knew I've seen hermaphrodite flowers on them, but not within the last 3, 4, 5 years. I really think that not feeding a lot of nitrogen towards whenever you're flowering, you know, I think that when plants are getting too much nitrogen during and past flowering, also anything that encourages root growth, maybe the vitamin, the B12 and those kinds of things aren't so hot during flowering, maybe those ought to be cut out as well.
Yeah.
You know, but
I've definitely seen an increased chance of herming in aquaponic systems. People ran way high nitrogen or nitrates.
It could be. I think it's more likely to be a nutrient thing. I really think it's not light. Awesome. I think the whole thing of light leaks is total BS, man. I got the lights right next to them, but the closet's open, the fluorescent's right outside there, and there's light leaks like crazy all the time. And I've never noticed it affect anything. I think it's much more likely to be something like a nutrient thing. And I think, and I know a few other growers who, once they start really getting into nitrogen, withholding nitrogen during flowering, you know, to allow the plants to get nice and yellow anyways, which it cuts down on the chlorophyll. If it's a nice sativa, kind of a little bit longer flowering sativa, you're probably going to get a better taste. You have longer time to do that, to withhold the nitrogen like that. And if you can get it to lose that chlorophyll, it's going to taste a lot better. Sometimes those kinds of plants don't even really need to be cured. They taste wonderful immediately as soon as they're dried. They taste and smell and vaporize or consume or whatever you do with them. You know, they're just about ready to go. You know, it's like really the chlorophyll. It's like the indicas, the heavy indicas with all that chlorophyll that need to be cured.
And how are you controlling your nitrogen in flower?
Just when my plants are very root bound, and I put a certain amount of nutrients into the soil, and by the time the plant is flowering, it's so root bound that it's used up all of that available stuff in the soil, and it's only going to get whatever I'm going to give it. So if I give it some compost tea and stuff like that, it gets something. But generally, by the time it's flowering, it's just getting water, and it's just because it's in that. So it's kind of it's almost like and the soil I use, they're tall. I've been lately using these quart size Starbucks cups, which are tall, and they're really cool. The water goes down like a piston through that, and I give it a really and it's a very drainy mix with pretty sandy and minerally, and so it's almost kind of like a hybrid hydroponic, except that so they're getting enough water, but they're really not getting a lot of nutrients. They got a lot of nutrients when they were growing, you know, and they got a lot of green and a lot of organic stuff when they were vegging, and then when they flowered, I just let them get root bound. Is pretty much the answer to that, I guess.
Well, do you do that at all to control the size of the growth? Because I've been teaching about the 12-12 methods of sativa, growing sativa 12-12 from start to finish in smaller pots.
Sativas, you have to do that.
90 to 110 days. Is that why you're doing it too?
Well, yes, because I mean, I leave everything. So I've got some short flowering plants and some longer flowering plants. I just have a continuous.
But you want it to finish the same.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Cool.
I mean, it would be. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So I think root bound, getting the plants to a condition of kind of root boundness is good. You know, withholding that allows you to give plenty of water and control the nutrients. You know,
limit the amount of nitrogen that's available to them to start with, right? Especially you were talking about doing small plants. You know, especially if you don't have a plant count. You know, by all means, like don't do it. Like I have 2 big plants because I have a plant count, not because I want to have 2 big plants or it's like somehow super beneficial. Like that's not really.
Big plants are much better for yield. Big plants yield much more. If you the bigger you veg a plant, the more yield you're going to get. You know what I mean?
And the longer it takes to finish, right? Agree? You agree with that too? It takes longer to
Yes,
finish.
absolutely.
You veg a
Yep.
sativa for 3
It
months
gets
instead of 2
momentum.
months. It's going to take 3 months to finish at least, or 4 months to finish. Where if you
Yes,
veg it for 2 months, it'll finish in 2 to 3 months. You know,
that's
that's what
right.
I found. It's a directly proportional to the size of the pot. And like
Yep.
you said, root bound, people make this mistake that, oh, see, I'm glad I found somebody that agrees with a lot of my, that kind of method 100% evidently. And what I find is people are always saying, oh, the plant's looking like crap. I teach on a forum. I'm an administrator on a teaching forum. Okay, 10 years, and we have a great time. We got a great the members teach now. I don't even hardly teach anymore. But we talk about that and they go, you'll see some guys coming on, oh, it's root. It looks like it might be root bound. And I said, plants don't look like that if they're root bound. If you feed them nutrients and water, they'll still thrive. They're just going to limit the size and they're going to finish faster if you limit the size by making them root bound. So I just wanted to clarify, it's not very nice to talk to somebody that follows that same philosophy I have, or like maybe I follow your philosophy, I just didn't know it at the time.
It's just so, I mean, I think the plant is a plant. I think I hate to sound corny, but I'm a student of Mary Jane. I think she really helps us a lot. It really teaches us a lot. The longer we work with the more we put in, the more energy we put in, the more she keeps giving us back these gifts. And this whole idea of talking together, I'm really interested in the idea of the future of the lounges, the cannabis lounges, because there was the Enlightenment in Europe in the 1600s when they started opening up the coffee houses and people started hanging out there instead of drinking in the pubs and stuff. And this is almost like, this is exactly like it. I feel it right now, like we're in this cannabis lounge. I'm with these guys that I couldn't believe how much I learned from this dude over here with the propeller top on his head. And you, and you over there, oh my God, it's fantastic. I know I'm talking too much, but I mean, this is a wonderful.
Ask him nicely and he'll make it spin for you.
Yeah.
Tommy's quite the extract artist himself, actually.
Yes, I made a wonderful canola oil with your.
Hell yeah!
I decarboxylated it in the sealed mason jar.
Yes.
It fucking works so.
How about
good.
Man,
wow, it came out so good. It's so tasty and smooth.
I got to meet him in person for the first time, and you can ask him. I had to spin the propeller. It was a necessary thing. I did. And
absolutely.
It was just as great as I thought it was.
Just so you know, I usually pay extra for that. So thanks for spinning the propeller. Yeah.
Yeah.
There should be an app, like when I hover my mouse over there, it should automatically.
His son will build that. Just so you know, like when he listens to this later, he'll be like, "I can do that."
Yeah.
We'll set it up.
I cannot wait to see this, because it will happen.
I could do that.
Well, I'm just having a blast, being kind of coming along on the show here and stuff. And Steve and Marty and everybody has like so many connections, and it's just been exciting for me to see people who are at the very least as passionate about what they do, like you are, like I am about what I do. And like, if you've been in one of Steve's seminars, you haven't, you need to get to one. But, you just see the depth of how much everybody is just bringing it forward. I like how you were just talking a moment ago about the plant brings us a lot of lessons. I've been finding it brings us some pretty cool people too.
Yeah.
And you're definitely one of them. I really appreciate the passion you're sharing with everybody.
One of the big lessons, one of the biggest lessons I've learned is that the best breeding things I can do are projects with other people. This plant with my friend from South Africa came along at the same time as another amazingly beautiful plant that was also like a, you know, I realized would be impossible to reduplicate. And both of them showed as these amazing clones, this beautiful breeding possibility. And they both resulted as, you know, from working with somebody else. So I'm just like totally excited about it. I understand that that was a lesson to me, that was to move in the direction of trying to partner with other people in breeding projects, which is because, you know, it's a natural thing. I mean, when you make seeds, I cross everything. I make seeds from every single plant that I grow, basically every seedling that I grow. You know, so what happens in the end is you've just got so many. I mean, over the years, it's amazing how many seeds you throw away or throw by the side of the road or whatever.
I got a question for you on seeds and stuff. Let's say
but I've given so many away, like thousands of seeds. Sorry. What?
Let's say somebody wants to get into working with some of the seeds kinds of things and learning about how to deal with generation 1, generation 2, but resources are limited what they can do with cannabis, maybe because they're in a state that is not as friendly as the moon or whatever. What plant would you suggest maybe to people that they could work with to mimic the lessons of learning to breed while maybe they're waiting for their state to come online? How can people learn some of the things you know with a surrogate crop?
Wow. You know, cannabis is dioecious, right? So that means that basically the male and female flowers come on separate plants, which is really different than something like a tomato. You can take a tomato. Tomatoes are naturally, those kinds of flowers naturally self-pollinate. You can just pollinate the plant itself and get another tomato just like the plant. Not really, but very similar. But cannabis is kind of continuously variable in it, and it's really difficult. The only real commercial crop that's similar to that is hops, Humulus lupus. Which, if you're in a northern, and I'm really interested in hops, I would love to get into breeding hops. But where I am,
in some areas though,
huh?
Isn't hops controlled in some areas?
I don't know.
That is a good
Actually,
question. There's some weird prohibitionist laws still out there.
There's actually high CBD hops as well because it's very closely related to cannabis.
Very close.
Yep.
And it's also male and female. If you plant seeds, if you buy cuttings, what you're going to do, you're going to buy clones, just like we like, except that they're select female clones, right? And the only way to get a male is to get seeds. And I've bought seeds for, it was, I think, a British strain before. It was like Kent Goldings or something like that. You can get seeds for that. But I didn't have very much luck with it. I'm pretty far south. I'm like 33 latitude down here. I think you guys further north can do hops a lot better. I don't know whether it needs to freeze or I'm not really sure. But I'm very interested. It's commercially probably, definitely the closest thing to cannabis. It's dioecious. It's you grow from cuttings, herbaceous cuttings, right? Rooted cuttings. And
all right. So what's the difference between dioecious and guianaceous?
Is that the plant is the two sexes, the male and female parts of the flower on separate plants on dioecious, and guianaceous is the perfect flower, which is the male and female parts on the same flower, and that's what most plants are. Not very many things are male and female. That's, I think, jojoba of all the commercial crops.
Cucumber.
Cucumbers and squash.
Cucumbers and squash, yeah.
Some fruit trees.
But that's right, yeah, cucumbers. No, but squash, you got male and female on the same vine.
I got a hydroponic greenhouse. I got a hydroponic greenhouse.
All squash like that, though.
There's a separate flower. Some squash might be different. Yeah, you may be right. Yeah. But anyway,
yeah. Cucumbers too. It's not all cucumbers are guianaceous. It's
kind of cucumbers that are all female now. Yeah, they're ones that you grow from seed. Yeah. Yep. Those ones generally have the two, like in squash, they have the two different kinds of flowers on the same vine. So the male doesn't have that little beginning squash at the base of it, just has a regular looking flower, and a female squash flower has got already a little pumpkin, little nub at the base of it.
I just had to ask that since I knew you knew. You know, like
Yeah.
Lane,
No, it's
because I've run across the Guianaceous, and then we were saying
Yes, Guianaceous. That's it.
Make sure I wanted to Dioecious. I wanted to make sure I understood exactly, you know, the
So
two
that makes
different.
breeding. That makes breeding kind of tricky. It makes breeding tricky. You know what I mean? It makes it difficult to self-pollinate. And actually, that's probably the easiest way to if you want to really make stable seeds, is to make feminized seeds by self-pollinating the plant. But I'm not sure why anybody really would want stable seeds.
Well, they don't they don't have time for breeding, so they just want to grow a plant they know is going to be a feminized plant, so they can dial it in and do their cloning or whatever, and always have bud for their medicine. That's why. That's the only reason. But
very consistent. Yeah.
Yeah, it's consistently the same.
Consistency. Yeah.
Like here, for instance, in Oregon, even if I have a medical card, that gives me the ability to grow 6 plants, and I can have twice as many veg plants as I can have total. So I can have 12 total veg plants in addition to my 6 in flower.
Wow.
But that's it. So if you want to run, you know, like pop a whole bunch of seeds, you know, you only have until they get to a foot tall before you have to decide if you're going to keep them or not. And you know, it's not always 100% apparent whether or not you want to do that by then. So plant count restrictions really make, you know, breeding a lot more difficult. And if you're in a state that is plant count instead of square footage of grow, because square footage of grow, you can have as many plants as you want inside that square footage. So California is great for that, but Oregon, not so much.
Yeah, the plant count thing, crazy. Plant
Go
count.
ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to say the plant count thing is bad, and it's the worst for breeders, and it kind of sucks too. I mean, you know, like the breeders are also the ones that really stand to lose the most. You know, they're the ones that are most afraid to come in from the cold. You know, and so many places are setting up systems, you know, where they're trying to get rid of the old guard, you know, and trying to make these new, you know, replace them with this new professional cannabis industry and stuff. And I don't know, you know. Yeah,
well, you're seeing the extinction of a lot of older races and older strains that you don't see anymore. Like, when's the last time you saw true Quirkle or true Dr. Greenspoon or pure Island Sweet Skunk or pure ISS or pure Super Silver Haze? Like, people just don't
Island
do
Sweet
anything
Skunk
that's
is
beyond
my absolute favorite strain that I didn't breed. I actually have a cut of, I didn't save the Quirkle, but I crossed it with my XXX and I saved that, the QX. It's fantastic. Sorry, go on.
But you don't see any of these longer flowering strains really left in the industry. I mean, I literally watched the extinction, at least commercially, of a lot of these strains when I worked up in Colorado. You know, the 5 years leading, I worked up there leading up into the recreational, and a couple years into the recreational. You know, it was really crazy to see strains that were super popular in the beginning that might have taken a longer time when dispensaries were willing to tolerate a couple of strains that took a little longer, that were really nice finishers, and now they won't do anything if it takes more than 10 or 11 weeks.
Yeah,
max.
Yeah, and there's some like 16-week strains out there that used to be, you know, fairly consistently ran. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, I don't think you would see them all over the place anywhere that, you know, like, even the black market needed to make money, you know. So I understand that there were limited numbers of people that did it, but now it just seems like everybody's like, what's 8 weeks? You know, like, how come you're not turning over in 8 weeks? And if it's not 8 weeks, why isn't it 8 weeks? And it's like, well, because it's not done, you know, like, I'm not counting days, I'm watching trichomes, you know, like, so, yeah, I just think that so much around that is driven, but you do see it way less. Yeah,
that's connoisseur shit. That really long. That's I think that's only home growers indoors commercially. It's kind of not really not really, it's losing, you don't make any money because and especially if it's a long season sativa, it might not even be very high in THC.
Right,
So
but
you're
a lot of those have really funky other profiles to them.
yeah, they're wonderful. I know, my favorite shit.
Great example. Some
Best
of
thing
them
in
are
the world.
extremely high THCV levels, which is another medical compound they're doing a lot of research with now, or CBC or CGN and CBC, and there's a whole bunch of other cannabinoids now that some of these older and longer term sativas, they don't even develop until halfway through their flowering where they're producing, the bulk of this stuff. And it's like, we're going to lose those genetics if we don't get serious about this. That's what scares me.
I think on the consumer level, there's a little bit of blame too. And I kind of call it like the Walmart effect, which is that like everybody knows that Walmart sucks, but then they're like, yeah, but it's $5 and over there it's 10. So, I'm just going to go to Walmart. You know what I mean? So you have that with so much availability now, especially in Oregon, where you have dispensaries everywhere. They've all got cheap deals that they're running on whatever popcorn they bought last month. So you really have that sort of Walmart level shelf now that probably would have just got blasted or given to a friend, or like the black market, you just wouldn't you wouldn't really see it. Or if it did get sold through somebody, it would it'd be cheap, and the dispensary really does the same thing, but on like a way broader scale. There's a lot of people that I don't think would even in the black market even worry about a lot of the stuff that gets into dispensaries now. So you have this availability of so much lower quality stuff for so cheap. Everybody thinks they got a great deal. So it just feels like Walmart to me in that respect, that it lowers everybody's standards.
In fact, remember, so one of the city council representatives that Marty and I had a pleasure of teaching over the weekend, she asked that, remember? She asked you, why is the cannabis such poor quality in the dispensaries? And you actually, I don't know if you want to give that answer again, but Marty,
I'm
why
glad
don't you
people can
explain
tell
that
the
answer
difference.
Because the government's controlling it.
She was.
Yeah,
So yeah, I do think that like there's a large portion of at least the Oregon market where they came in and used regulation to sort of create these little bubbles, and they could decide who had product in the dispensary. So
Worthy. Yeah. Worthy.
yeah, so it came down to that. Like we talked about if you go back to before recreational, we had some relatively basic things. Like we had to do mold and mildew testing, we had to do pesticide testing, and I believe it was every 5 units that you sold to the dispensary, you had to provide testing for. And so that was relatively straightforward, right? You could take it to any lab that did the testing. And that was one of the things that they changed right off the bat, was now you had to have state licensed labs in order to do it. So for all of Oregon, they had 3 labs that were approved in order to test cannabis. So, I mean, we're talking like just completely overrun. Like these places really wasn't their decision. Like the lab themselves, like they weren't the ones that decided it, who got approved first or whatever. Like maybe they had friends and there's backdoor deals and who got the first ones. You could get into conspiracy theory, but the reality is that there was only 3 of them, and everything had to go through those 3, and it created a huge traffic jam. So dispensaries were limited on the amount of product that they could purchase. So,
and if you're wondering how California is going to go, that's exactly what's going to happen. Just for those of you that aren't aware, the prices are going to go up, not down, at least for a while.
There'll be a little bubble. That's kind of what happened in Oregon. Like, so, and I think like it has less to do with price control and more has to do with like just creating a bubble. Like we had as well supplied dispensaries, like we had clean products, we had multiple strains, like everything you could want in a dispensary was established for the medical market like years in advance. Like there really was no like really need to change anything until recreational came along, and now we had the OLCC and we had all these regulations that they decided needed to be different after we already went through and decided all of them for medical. Like, so there was a whole bunch of stuff that kind of happened in between, but by creating those bubbles and putting those labs in charge of so much and everything, and whoever could get approved would get their stuff sold right away. So you had this bubble that came up, but you also had, they changed the way they do testing now too. So you don't even actually have to do mold and mildew testing, and you have to do way less pesticide testing than you did before. You have an approved list of, and a banned list of pesticides or things that you can use as pesticides, however you want to label them. But so they put out these white papers and all this different stuff, but there's no actual mold and mildew testing that's required other than a visual inspection. So it's kind of like, why wouldn't you? Like, a lot of this stuff, you know, could end up in the hands of cancer patients. So obviously that should be one of the things you can do. But when you get behind it, they couldn't figure out a cheap and effective way to do accurate testing fast enough, is what their excuse was. I don't know what they were doing the whole rest of the time we were testing it, and all of the years before when you had to do it for medical, but now they decided that it was too expensive, which I'm pretty sure, since I went through that process multiple times, it was about $130 per unit, which really isn't that bad. In my opinion. It's not great, but I didn't think it was terrible, and people still sold it for a profit, and everybody worked it all out. So I'm not really sure what the change was going into recreational, but that was what they justified to make that change. So you had you have lesser quality product getting through the lab now, and you have a restriction on where and who can do the testing. So it just really watered down all of the market. Like, everything just became, whatever came through the test for a very short amount of time was all basically the same thing. It was all the same strains from the same grows from the same people in every dispensary. And you know, you saw all these things disappear, like your 1-to-1 strains and your CBD dominant strains. And, you know, like, you used to be able to go in and get like 4 or 5 different CBD extracts, you know, whether it was like 1.5 to 1 or 1-to-1 or whatever, you know, you had options. And then all of a sudden you went in and you were lucky if they had 1 CBD extract, and you're lucky if they had 3 different strains of extract. And so that was probably like a solid month to 2 months where a lot of dispensaries were like, you know, really hard up. But it created, I feel like, that bubble that they really wanted, to be able to kind of flush out the market and decide who gets to sell and who doesn't. But for the consumer, that's when, like, you know, the Walmart level stuff really started hitting, was that. And I feel like all the legislation that was sold to, it would improve the quality of cannabis, and it was like not even close to that. It just lowered, like, everything. You went from having to test every 2 units to having to test every 10 units. So guess who pushed for that change, right? I mean, big recreational growers who want to save money on bulk testing. Now they only have to test 1 unit out of every 10 pounds instead of 1 out of every 2.
And that's where the
for
government
people
came
that
in with those, that's where they came in with those changes. But, okay, go ahead.
For people that don't deal with ludicrous amounts of weed on a regular basis, a unit is a pound.
Oh, okay. Units a pound. All right. So what I wanted, thank you, Steve. A unit's a pound. But, you know, it's seeing that you said you didn't want to go spout the conspiracy theories, but when I see that they only do 3, you know, license 3 places, it looks like they're trying to, they know they're going to be overloaded. And then when you come to the other side of it, you have to say, you know, if there was a way there, to me, it's always still about the commercial industrial complex getting a hold of the way to do it, because they're gonna keep doing stuff to mess up what's going on to make it look like it failed, even though it's really only failing because the logistics are wrong, you know. So we don't even have to know why, but the logistics are just wrong. And but All right. Well, go ahead. Go ahead. You want to say something, Marty? Yeah, I'll yield.
No, it's all right. I mean, I was just gonna say, I was gonna agree with you. Like, yeah, their logistics are usually off, and they rarely. I feel like they rarely decide much of any of it, like depending on the actual evidence. Like, part of the reason why they were able to ban stuff in Jackson County here, like we talked about before, was the fact that supposed cannabis grows were lowering property values because people didn't want to buy houses that were next to cannabis grows. But that's
really,
so unequivocally untrue that it's not even funny. Like, everywhere around here is just skyrocketed in prices because of cannabis. People are moving here because they want to grow and consume cannabis. Like, everything is up. There is no real estate that is down. And if you want to grow commercial cannabis, you better bring your checkbook. I got outbid on like 3 different places. I offered $10,000 to $15,000 over asking price and got outbid every time. So you can't tell me that real estate prices have dropped. Colorado up, Washington up, Oregon up. People moving to these states. Why do you think they're moving there? Like, in record numbers. Do you think Colorado just all of a sudden like got a huge spike right after legalization, and Oregon got a huge spike after legalization, and Washington got a huge spike, and like, at what point does it like matter what's actually happening to these people? That's what I don't get. Like, it just doesn't seem to get. They don't care.
The property values isn't the point, though. It's like you've been fighting and why you had to move. It's because local municipalities are being able to change the law the state made. In other words, the state says you can do this, and now you've got local municipalities or counties or either or saying, oh, we suddenly decided we're going to be a dry county. And, and the law was enacted with the
part of what
them doing that. And that happens every time you vote. Yeah, go. Well, we talk about this all the time, but it's to bring the realization you were going off on the fact that this happens to y'all, but it really just comes back down to the same political thing, that the law is allowing small municipalities to change what the state says you can do, and that changes every time you vote a new person into office. So you get one clique that wants to have cannabis growth, then you get another clique that doesn't, and then they fight for the election, and whoever wins changes the law back to what it was before. Legal 2 years ago or 4 years ago to whether it was not legal, and which is exactly what for Mr. GreenGene, if you don't know, Marty had to move because his neighbor didn't like the smell of his cannabis in his backyard.
Right. So their smell ordinance basically depends on the fact that people don't want to smell cannabis, and that will deter them from buying somebody's house that's for sale because it's next door to a cannabis grow. So they're part of the reasoning behind their local ban on outdoor grows. I'm 100% serious, is that it will lower real estate values, and because people don't want to smell it.
Excellent.
Yeah, ask people in Colorado how it affected property
Science
values on the It's
and
fucking
that's
bullshit.
what Marty was saying too. And that's what Marty was saying too. All the property values are
doubled my rent. It doubled the rent of my old apartment in 3 years.
Yeah, no, it's everything, rent, everything across the board. Like, there's not a place that you could find where it lowered real estate values. Like, and if somebody wants to do that, I mean, if you want to be picky about where you want to be, then don't move to Oregon because you can grow cannabis here. Like, that's what I feel like should be the American response to this question. If you don't want to smell it, you should move, not I should stop growing it, right? This is my property in my house. You can raise cows and have chickens and do all of that shit that you want over there and grow roses. Maybe I don't like the smell of your roses, but who fucking cares? If I don't like it, that should be my problem. Like, there's no other mechanism that you have as a citizen to impose your will on what somebody does in their own property next door. Like, where can you complain about it and have something done? Like, because they're growing something. If you don't like tomatoes, what if you're allergic? Like, there was even a case where somebody tried to have beehives removed because the neighbor was allergic to bees, which to me, that kind of makes sense. You know what? I'm a little bit more on board with that. But even still, they ruled against it. They said, no, you can't, no, you can't dictate, like, carry your EpiPen was kind of like their advice or move, you know. That was, and so I don't understand the difference.
and
like
some of
even in
this
that
is
kind
the,
of,
you know,
you
you
know,
have a
it's not
handful
like
of
this
really
guy is gonna
tyrannical
fall
city
over
council.
dead because he smells my skunk, you know. Like I just,
Well,
I don't know.
Marty, even if you're allergic to bees like me, I walk through my greenhouse and I have bees. I mean, if you have a greenhouse with 250 plants in it, you're gonna have bees. it's
Right.
it's kind of like I've learned to, and I've been stung a few times. I've been on death's door. I mean, literally, like I was totally. If you ever seen Full Arrest, you're totally white, like pasty white, like movie white, vampire white, with all your veins, all like your joints, your elbow, wrist, joints are all crimson red. I was that color, dead on the floor pretty much, and I got saved by epinephrine, you know, a little epinephrine and some steroids and Benadryl eventually. Funny enough, they wouldn't give me the Benadryl, so they got me on the ambulance. So they gave me the epinephrine was the first thing, but being allergic to bees even, and I'm thankful that you did go to the point where, well, I can understand if, you know, I had to stop having bees. So, but on the other hand,
I'm saying, like,
I wouldn't expect you to, because I have a greenhouse and I have bees and hornets and stuff, and I have to be careful, and I get stung, and I'm like going through a really, you know, anxiety. You know, I get very anxious over it because I almost died from it, but I still think it was where I was stung. And well, here's the thing. I want to point this out while I'm on this topic, and then I'll get back off because we weren't really on the bee topic. But people out there that might experience anaphylactic shock from getting stung by a hornet or bee, that most people do not understand. This is a public service announcement. You can get stung 20 times and never have anything more than the anxiety and the fact you just got the shit stung out of you by a hornet or a bee. And yellow jackets are territorial, so watch out for them bitches. If you see them, get the hell away from them. Hornets are less territorial. If you don't really mess with them or reach into somewhere they're nested, they probably wouldn't bite you. You know, you'd have a chance to kill them before you do. But here's the bottom line. Times in my life, no problem. Here's the fact. Venom from bees and hornets never leaves the fatty tissue in your body. It's stored in your body forever. And it's just a matter till it's the old straw broke the camel's back. You could get stung 20 times or 30 times, but that 21st or that 31st time could be the time that you're laying on the floor going, I'm fixing to meet God. You know, if you're you know, disposed to being a Christian. And my point, I did see a lot of shit. It was kind of cool, but we're not going to get into my near-death experience. But I'm here today. But I just, when we get on that topic, and you brought that up, it's a very important social thing for me to share, that you guys be careful. And yeah, and like you said, carrying an EpiPen. And I see Mr. GreenGene nodding over there. He knew about the fatty tissue. It does not go away. So always be careful. You got stung by bees before, and you're okay. Always be wary, but don't fight them or freak out. Go away, even if they
poke the hornet's nest, right?
Huh?
Don't poke the hornet's nest, right?
Right, but even, you know, most of the time, the only thing you realize, yellow jackets, and, you know, I mean, but hornets and bees are generally, you know, unless you invade them or like stick your hand somewhere, your leg somewhere where they, you know, just happen to be. And you know, you'll be okay. But okay, I'm sorry to sidetrack the conversation. I just had to bring that up because I am allergic. But I don't think you should have to move because you had some bees, like a beehive. Even though it was dangerous to me because of that fact. It's a matter of being educated. It's too bad people just can't be educated. And like you said, the property value is going up, yet the law and the local municipality allowed you to be persecuted over growing cannabis outside because your neighbor didn't like the smell.
Yeah, they aren't required to provide any proof for that. You know, like we basically had to threaten to sue them, and well, they did end up suing them, but when they were still threatening to sue the council here, they had to provide the actual complaints that they used to create this ban. And so, you know, Jackson County here is pretty good size. I think we have like, you know, maybe just under 1 million people or something here in the, you know, the small little valley here. Well, it's a pretty good sized valley, I guess. you know, we have quite a few towns and stuff. And we have a number of growers. There's like 2,000 growers registered in Jackson County.
We got beautiful agriculture out there too in the valley.
Right. You know, it's a great place for it. You know, we're right smack in the banana belt. You know, it's a great growing zone, you know, great watershed, fertile soil. Like, it makes sense, right? And so the number of complaints that the entire county had that they based all this on was 27 complaints. So they enacted legislation based on a total of 27 complaints that affected over 2,000 growers. I mean, do you have any idea how many different things you could go get 27 complaints about in the county? And do you think they would ever act on it? No, absolutely. I could get 27 signatures to put a park up in somewhere else, or put regulations on, you know, like the swings aren't safe enough at the park or something like that, you know, like any weird
Move that speed bump
thing you can think of. Yeah. And it wouldn't even be like 27. That's like nothing. You know, why are you even here? Why are you talking to us? Like, you're going to need like 5,000 signatures. You know what I mean? Like,
this is the reason why you vote out your asshole city council members that pull that kind of bullshit.
Right.
Just like you said, make sure you get these you know, these people out that pass these garbage ass laws in the name of complete and utter bullshit.
Right. And so then even after they passed the laws, then they were supposed to grandfather in people that had existing stuff from before. Like Roger, you were talking about, it changes so often that they have laws that you're supposed to grandfather people in who started their grows underneath certain regulations. And then, so they decided to do that. But then it was in order to go through and get your grandfather status from the county, you had to get certified to be a grandfathered grow with the state.
But that's total bullshit, because now they're enacting that's constitutionally totally fucked right there. They can't do that. They cannot do that.
Straight up extortion of $1,500, and then they didn't even want to approve any of them. They had to get sued.
Grandfathered means grandfathered. There's no new vote or new fee to be grandfathered. Grandfathered means you cannot change our situation. You should sue. I tell you what, you're moving, but you got I can't believe
that it's a cannabis law, and cannabis laws get treated like the cannabis industry gets abused and used so badly. And we've all seen it. Actually, Mr. GreenGenes, he's been around for a long time. You know, I'm sure you've seen this happen over and over again.
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable. I mean, and the paranoia, you know, and most of the guys my age and myself included, we're very paranoid. You know what I mean? And it's like. So I mean, it's you know, it's just been a long time coming. It's hard to get used to, but you know, seeing things. I think what's really changing fast is social acceptance of cannabis, and certain things are really pushing it. You know, like the little girls with their epilepsy, and you know, you can't think of the children, and
yeah, that's
and another
comes up, yeah.
Up here in Pasadena, we had recently, I think it was a city, we're talking about politics, you guys are talking about politics, and I think it was a city election where it made sure that outdoor growing was, like, the city was trying to outlaw outdoor growing, which a lot of, you know, the sort of wealthier California cities are trying to do. And they, you know, someone got up and argued that, what about the little old lady who you know, needs to grow her medicine, you know, and she shouldn't be forced to pay at the dispensary, you know, she shouldn't be forced to pay premium top dollar. Maybe she can't afford that, you know, so isn't it, what's the matter with her growing her medicine in the backyard? And I believe it was passed because of that, you know, because of that argument. So I think pretty sure it's Pasadena. It's one of these cities up further north, up by LA, further north than me. I think you can, you know, very unrestricted outdoor growing. I'm curious about Colorado. I know a couple of friends are watching from Denver, And I'm curious about outdoor growing. Is there great restriction on that? I didn't mean to change the subject.
Yeah, most places in Colorado ban outdoor growing. I lived there for a long time, so.
It's a ban, a complete ban.
It's not on the state level, but it's you know, most townships have banned it, I guess.
Huh.
So if you're on a 40-acre tract out in the country, you're up on a mountain, you can grow your own outside, but not in the neighborhood.
In Colorado, you wouldn't want to grow it out. You would want to cure it in a greenhouse because the weather's too screwy.
Yeah, well, I agree with that too. No, I love it out there, but yeah, you're right.
Soil's so nice though. That red clay soil. It seems like it would be wonderful. What about further down in some of the valleys or further south? You know, than
Oh yeah, down by Pueblo, you got a whole bunch of the big CBD guys.
Yeah, more deserty down there.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, the soil just looks wonderful. I mean, I think, and you know, when I see soil like that, it's like, wow, I bet you could grow some yummy cannabis there.
Yeah.
I have friends in the Snake River Valley in southern Idaho there. Growing some wonderful outdoor. That's also high altitude. That's great. Oh wow. Outdoor cannabis.
Sure. You got to nail that grow season, but that higher altitude and that lush foliage. Oh yeah.
It's got to be a fast finishing indica, you know. Yeah, it's got to be bam, and you know, stick it in, put it in late.
Funny. Since we're on that topic.
Yeah.
We're on that topic. I noticed that indicas tend to do much better above 8,000 feet just in yield, even strains that have grown at other altitudes. Off the same moms. I don't know if you have that same observation.
Oh yeah, much more adapted to colder temperatures and things like that. The indicas, absolutely, and yeah, and you know, shorter season. I mean, that's what they're good for. That's kind of the problem. You know, when you get these longer season sativas, that only can be, you know, finished outdoors and further south. You know, around like where we are here and stuff.
Well, I'd like to touch base on that a little bit though, because I find that a lot of indicas in the temperate ranges, in the zone 7 and 8 and stuff like that, they tend to not be shorter, really flowering, especially if you're looking at trichomes and stuff like that, and really truly trying to dial in your harvest. It takes longer, and I think now that you mentioned it, when you're talking to, I think Steve just said something about 8,000 feet. Okay, now we got a new variable we got to put in our grow room: atmospheric pressure. Because I think it probably has to do with the
nighttime temperatures too. You go up in the altitude like that, and every night it's going to get colder, and the chances of getting cold in the daytime. And so a lot of your indicas will get a lot of that'll bring out the fall foliage, bring out the colors, especially if there isn't all that much nitrogen, you know. So if you withheld some nitrogen when the flowers are developing outdoors, and you'll see beautiful, you know, reds and yellows and purples and stuff underneath there's also the regular purple colorations that you'll see in some kinds of strains of indicas, you know, the genetic kind of purple, but I'm talking about the sort of under the fall foliage colors, the sort of under the chlorophyll colors.
I was talking about the air being thinner at 8,000 feet.
Yeah,
like in a guy's grow room in South Carolina. So
yeah,
the guy's grow room in South Carolina is going to be a different. It's going to be harder. Now you can still make it cold, but as far as yielding higher, like you were saying, like where it really, like, oh, this is a cold weather plant in a short grow period at a high altitude, which means that's a whole lot different than in any grow room. Unless you've got an ability to create the atmospheric pressure of 8,000 feet.
It could be bad.
Moves your VPD. It moves your VPD as well, because the air pressure is completely different in altitude. So you want to run slightly lower humidity than you normally would. Which is another one of the things I noticed as well, that, you know, especially at altitude, you got to adjust everything. Everything gets changed when that air pressure changes, especially.
But at high altitudes, y'all can have immense high humidity also. It can get dense and mist.
Actually, it's the opposite. At higher altitude, it's very
drier, usually drier, yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Oh, okay.
Air
Okay.
can
That's
hold
why
as
you
much
double
moisture.
gate. Okay.
Yeah.
Cold temperature helps lock out a little bit of your nitrogen, and it also the cold temperature helps make it so that the plant it locks out a little bit more of the phosphorus, which when you get a little bit of a reduction in the phosphorus, especially in flower, and you have your molybdenum really dialed in, which is the other one that's the molybdenum is really important for anthocyanin production.
Starting to make me drool. I'm just imagining that tastes good. Yeah.
Yes, Steve's been thinking for a while, and now he's come up with something. Just that was great. That was great. Great exchange there, man. Now, see, so just for all you people out there listening to the show, this is what we're saying. When you're in a little grow tent in there, see, and you're going, my blueberry isn't blue. Well, there we just gave you a lot of reasons and a lot of ways to make your blueberry blue. So
Swing your temps, boost your molybdenum a little bit, and throw some
get your humidity
on your
down.
soil layer. The cheap and dirty way.
Some people call it, a lot of times the purple coloration gets called stress purple, stressed purple or whatever.
There's like 1,000 people out there that actually use molybdenum in their cannabis grow. There's like 1% of all growers that actually say, molybdenum, what the hell are you talking about?
Oh no, we've done a whole episode on it actually. It was like
oh no, I use it's one of the elements you use, molybdate, molybdenum. But it's funny when you say that just adjust your molybdenum. Yeah, how many people put their actual elements in is what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, and that's something if you get used to listening to this show, we'll very commonly talk about individual nutrient levels, and most people talk about total ppm or total EC or I don't know, my part A or part B, and it's way better when you actually understand it. It's cheaper if you can buy your own mineral salts and make your own brew and not pay for the watering, not pay for the packaging, and understand what the hell is going on in your plant's root system, understand what the hell is going on in the plant so that you can, actually predict what's going to happen and adjust it and prevent problems before they happen rather than treating deficiencies. So.
Yes. Yeah. Have a plan too. You have to have a plan going in for all you.
That's the hardest thing. Whenever I teach, have to teach hydro people, man, they're so hung up on total ppm or total EC, and it's like you got to get away from all that. Just take $40 once a month, send out your thing, get a total ppm water report from your local ag department at whatever college happens to be near you. Just tell them it's an organic hydroponic system, and they'll give you all the things you want, and you can adjust them. We've gone over pretty much everything you could want to go over in some of the early episodes as far as different nutrients and stuff. So it gives people a really good guide. It's not all in one episode, but we also have classes and other stuff. But the idea is just to try to get the information out there. That's why we tried to do the podcast. But people get so hung up on trying to be too broad, and it's like sometimes you need to be very specific in order to really fine tune some of this stuff.
It's all about the micronutrients.
Yep.
That's right. Which molybdenum is one of the micronutrients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's a question. So
that one thing that happens to be 1,000 things.
Yeah. So here's a question I have for you. You were talking about stem strength and breeding and stuff. How have you used silica, and what kind of experiences have you had with silica additives? Because
it's one of those. I've noticed that, but I use a lot of I use straight sand in the mix, and the plants probably are getting a fair amount. It seems like cannabis plants love sand. They do like it. They like the feel of the sharp, especially sharp sand. I think they like to grip onto sharp rocks and sharp sand. I don't know. It's just my feeling. But yeah, and I have I've tried a silica additive from that company, which I actually do like. I think they're a crossover. I don't even know if they're a cannabis specific nutrient company. What was the name of it? I got it at one of these expos. Shit.
There's so many conventions and expos now.
I'm gonna get refill my tea, and it's right in the kitchen, and I'll grab it and I'll pull it right out, and I'll tell you what it is. I'm gonna be right back.
Well, he's going to do that. It's nice to see Brain grow again. We haven't seen you in a minute, man. How you been?
Yeah, well, I've been busy with some stuff, but lately I was able to acquire some beans from my buddy who just randomly visited from Washington. He hit me up on a message. He was like, "Yeah, I got some beans." I was like, "Yo, perfect timing because I don't have any plants in my system right now."
Nice.
But now I have pretty decent seedling that's coming up. I have two plants in my dual root zone. One of them's probably about 3 weeks in, and it's growing really fast, really vigorously. And I'm running both of them in my breeding chamber setup, which is my 30-gallon setup, which is just the 30-gallon reservoir, grow bed, and a swirl filter, and then my lights that I use that are Amazon lights as well. And it's doing pretty good in there. And then I have another one that's in my main system, and I was able to actually, because the way I designed my breeding chamber is it can fit through your average door threshold. So I moved it all the way across the house into the front room, and I have my other system, in the back room. And back there, I have one that's just straight aquaponic, no dual root zone, and it's doing pretty good. My pH back there was around 6.2 whenever I checked it, and it started yellowing around the leaves a bit, so I added some calcium and magnesium in there, and it's just chugging right along now. So I'm happy to just be growing plants again, to be honest. It's just, I just feel like myself again, it's
Oh,
just,
yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, I don't know how else to describe it. I just feel like myself again, it feels good to just be growing again.
I know Tommy and I are feeling the same way.
Yeah,
Oh
that's
yeah, and also, by the way, the I didn't even mention the strain that I'm working with is a ninja fruit
Protex.
from Ocean Grown Seeds.
Ocean
So,
grown, nice.
Ocean
Yeah.
grown seeds. I've
So it
heard
looks like you found that stuff there.
What's that?
Oh yeah. Sorry, ProTech. It's the. Am I still muted now?
Protect. Yeah, there you go.
It's silicon.
Protect.
ProTech. That company is really nice. The fertilizer that they made was really good. I tried it. It was a very high quality. It was a nice one. This company, good.
What are the two main kinds of silicas that you can get dry like that?
Yeah. The silicone solution is this is 003, and generally thought of as being related to stem strength. Is what he was asking, and that's correct. But I mean, yeah.
There's
This
potassium
one's, huh?
silicate and then
It's like
dioxide.
potassium
Usually.
silicate and
Yeah, let me read the ingredients. It's
Stronger
got,
root, potassium, stronger roots. Yep.
yeah.
And there's
I
also
can't.
there's calcium silicate, which is what is it? Waltonite or Woltonite or Wolonite or something.
one of them you're a buffer with, isn't it?
Yeah, potassium silicate is the one I like to use for pH.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought I remembered something like that. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think this is, people use it in hydroponic solutions. I'm sure of it. I know it isn't just for container grown plants. I didn't really notice. I tried some of it. I didn't really notice that much of a difference. Like I said, maybe it's because I've got the sand in there. Last couple of years, I've been using that. Been using a lot of charcoal. There's a lot of it in there, man. The mix stays black sometimes. It's tricky. You're looking at the top, and it doesn't change color. You're wondering if it's dry, and it's dry, but it's still black because it's got so much charcoal in there. Plants seem to love it. It's amazing how much you can add. A couple of batches recently, I was almost trying to OD just to see what's. I'm always messing around. I never really fall into, too much of a routine, except with my labeling.
What your charcoal is being made from.
I'm just buying the old the regular stuff that's sold for. It's hardwood charcoal that you can get at Walmart that's sold for barbecuing. Just the
Yeah,
regular.
with no starter fluid, just flat
No,
charcoal.
no, not that stuff.
Right.
Those are charcoal.
Yeah.
That
Charcoal
stuff is.
briquettes.
You gotta say that to people,
No,
though. You
not
gotta
that.
say
That
that.
stuff is poisonous. I think that's poisonous. I don't
Right.
think.
Yeah, that's got all
that.
kinds of stuff in it.
Yeah.
No. I'm talking about you can buy high quality hardwood charcoal
Right.
for your barbecue.
Right.
Yeah, and that works great. And also, as I was talking about before, I made that funky biofilter thing in the backyard, and have been charging it with. In any case, you probably should soak it in water, pre-soak it in water, because the charcoal, or when you're watering the first time, if you're using a soil mix, be really careful to thoroughly water, because the charcoal is not wetted when you first put it in. It's incredibly dry. And I think it can freak out the roots, if it doesn't get, you don't really go to great lengths to wet it. It takes a long time for the chunks of charcoal to sink in the biofilter in the water. It'll take a long time, you'll see. So it takes a while for a chunk of charcoal to even soak up water, and it probably should be pre-soaked before added to a soil mix, like I said, because it's super dry.
And if you're using it in aquaponics, make sure you get a good rinse. The carbon dust from the charcoal is not at all good for your fish gills.
I don't know about that. I don't know, but yeah, people do use obviously activated charcoal in fish tanks. That's kind of where I get the idea.
The reason is they use it to absorb the nitrogen and lower some of the heavy metals and stuff. But
it absorbs any kind of organic gases. Actually, a lot of organic gases. So like when you first, generally fish are they're giving off a bunch of protein, their waste and stuff like that, or it's creating usually it kind of creates a scum on the surface, like a protein scum on the surface of the water,
I just think it's funny you bring up orchids. We were talking charcoal, and I brought up orchid mix, and then you kept referring to orchids all night about the same kind of thing where it changes all the different, even with the breeding and the
the
all that. That
orchid
was pretty cool.
selection.
Really, so for you guys out there that want something real simple, go down somewhere and buy you a big ass bag of orchid mix. It'll have all the stuff in there, the wood and the charcoal and everything, and reuse it too. I agree with that too. And I'm kind of moving to although building hydroponic systems and all, I'm on the cusp of doing aquaponic system, and I've got fish suppliers lined up and all, but haven't done hydroponics. I've gone to again, it's funny because you say it's a kind of a hybrid to hydroponics. Some people argue it is true hydroponics, but I've gone to Pro Mix. See, and I've been using Pro Mix and different. You can go organic, you can go chemical nutrients, whatever you want. You can add whatever compost or whatever. It's a perfect medium for doing any kind of experiment. Which I found. And I mean, I'm not trying to sell it to everybody. I'm just saying, after all these years of building all these systems, my grow to grow, my little tiny, 4 or 5 plant grow to grow, I just stopped doing all the fancy stuff and busted my ass because I found out I can grow the plants in as good or better quality in Pro Mix, and then I've been able to use different nutrient companies and stuff like that. And I haven't mentioned it to you, and I doubt you've seen me on the show when I mentioned it, but being a hydroponic grower, I learned from a guy in South Africa to make my own hydroponic mix. I make it 300 gallons at a time out of the 50 cap. Now it's not organic. I start with calcinite, potassium nitrate, and you know what I'm talking about. And I make my own micronutrients, and it works really well. It works really, really well. And then, and it's funny, because this, originally was the aquaponic show, and, here you're a soil grower, and I'm an aquaponic soil grower, that's, I've done kind of all of it just till I could teach people on websites and stuff. And here we meet tonight, and these guys, I'm sure you've kind of got blown away with a couple things tonight that come up. Guys brought up, and but it works in our soil mix too. That's what's so cool. if you learn what these guys are doing in advanced hydroponics with a dual root zone, you can add those compost teas, like you said, the ferments. I love the ferments with the blackberries and stuff that provide the potassium and the phosphorus and the potassium, or phosphates and potassium. I don't want to misspeak.
Yeah, I'm big on wild crafting and making your own nutrients. Yeah.
Yeah, and add nothing else. You just add you make this compost, and that's what you give it. Like you said, you don't. Mr. GreenGene, you said you basically just water it during flower. You want it to, all the leaves to yellow and do all that stuff. I mean, you're going hardcore that way. And I love for people to hear that, because too many people are pressing it for too long, I think.
Oh, they look at that fade and they go, what's wrong with my plant? Why are all the leaves turning yellow and falling off? You know, like they're trying to fix something that's not broken, you know.
Yeah, they don't produce sugar. They can't produce sugar anymore, so they fall off. They're no longer any use to the plant, so they fall off.
Right, especially in flower. You know, if you're a week 8 of flower and you're not seeing a fade, then, you know, you probably have some longer to go, you know. Like,
longer flowering just takes more skill, in no matter what, in whatever medium you're growing in, you know, the longer flowering period takes, you know, it's more difficult. I mean, that's the most difficult time of keeping the plants happy and balanced and everything, and
healthy.
And healthy, exactly. And so for a longer season sativa, you know, letting the ladies down gracefully, you know, keeping the ladies happy for a longer period of time, it takes skill, you know. And you know, indoors it costs a lot more because you have to run the light for that much longer. So it's generally only a connoisseur thing that people, home growers who are into getting a connoisseur product. I doubt you're going to find that, you know, only connoisseur friends that I know bust that stuff out for me. I've never seen anything like that in a dispensary, although I don't frequent dispensaries very much. How many have I been to? 1 or 2 in California and 1 in Colorado. But yeah, so you know, yeah, I'm just saying that those takes more skill. You know, longer flowering just takes a lot of skill. I mean, no matter what method that you're growing. And sometimes the results are, you know, can be worth it for the connoisseur. You know, they're not necessarily higher potency, maybe, but maybe super fine, wonderful taste. You know, the longer period gives you that longer period of time to, some people call it flushing or whatever, you know, withholding nutrients towards the end, like that, allowing the plant to run out of nutrients. You know, that gives it the longer period window there is. You know, some strains could be said to have a wide harvest window. That's nice. You know, that means that you could pick. That means they maybe get solid and resin up early, and you could pick early if the rent is due. But if you can allow the ladies to go on another month, so that would say, you know, be a wide harvest window, right? So the connoisseur could, you know, hold on to these plants and keep them happy for another month and get, oh my gosh, wow, that's just fantastic.
Which I think speaks a little bit to quality too. Like you know, we talked a little bit earlier about the decrease in quality in dispensaries. We've done so much to discourage the small connoisseur grower. You have big recreational growers that want rows and rows and rows.
They can't compete.
That's going to produce pounds. You know, like that's another reason you see a drop in quality. Well, we talked about it a little bit in the class the other day too, was that if all of your regulations favor big money recreational grows and make it really expensive for mom and pop connoisseur growers or medical growers that are growing specific strains or CBD strains or longer flowering strains or any of those things, like, you just increase the cost for all those things even more, you know, like, or plant count. You know, we talked about that too. You know, like, you're not gonna, if you have a plant count, you're not gonna want to grow like a 16-week, you know, flowering sativa. Like, it's just, you're not gonna want to do it, and you probably couldn't stay in business and do it. You probably, you know, a business person would be like, "Are you crazy? What are you doing?" You know. So when everything leans towards big recreational grows and you decrease the amount of connoisseur growers that can grow on a smaller scale with more attention and managed properly with, you know, variety and all of those types of things. If you want to get all of those things, you're going to need a large number of growers, independent growers, not large recreational growers that are going to grow all the same things strictly for profit. So that's the other part of regulation, is that it lowers the overall competition to that Walmart level. You get Walmart competing with Fred Meyer instead of Walmart competing with, you know, all the mom and pop stores that are around. So that's kind of the difference. Eventually we get to all of these just filtered down, lower quality, top shelf stuff. Like, it's really great watered down genetics that was still grown in a greenhouse with 600 other plants, you know, like it's still that. Like, you have a big name strain that's still just massively produced and put on the top shelf, and it may even look good and test good and all of that stuff, but I think that's how you end up lowering the overall quality with regulation that really just favors big money.
And the other thing is that everyone is heading towards, consumers are all heading towards connoisseurship. More and more people now have, but when I say connoisseur, I don't mean like educated. I mean connoisseur. I mean somebody who has 4 or 5 jars. I merely mean somebody with choices. That's all. I'm defining the connoisseur as the person who keeps a set of jars. They got 4 or 5 different things, right? As soon as that happens, and even if they're going to the to the dispensary, they immediately defocus on, like, the, you know, they don't necessarily care about the super strongest strain anymore. You know, they're going to get up in the morning and they're going to smell that Island Sweet skunk and be like, wow, you know, man, let's try this one now. You know, what having the connoisseur is actually going the opposite direction as tolerance. They become more sensitive to the different effects of the different strains. That's why they like to have their 5 jars in front of them, is because, you know, the more they think about it, the more they work with it. You know, because cannabis doesn't, it's not like cocaine or alcohol. It just doesn't hit you over the head and do its thing to you, man. You know, you have to kind of work with it as well. You know, you have to be, we all know that you have to be in the right mood. It depends very much on how you're feeling and what the setting is, where you do, you know, what kind of mood, what you expect from it.
Well, they are ladies.
They are the ladies, exactly. So, right. So, you know, so the thing is that,
so damn finicky.
People, you know, so people, when they become connoisseurs, they start looking at their choices, their multiple jars, right? And I think it makes people the opposite of tolerant. They stop. It's usually the people that only buy 1 jar at a time of a very strong indica, and then they start abusing it almost like alcohol. They're like, yeah, man, I could smoke 10 joints of this stuff. I don't even feel a damn thing, man. I don't know. I got to take a tea break. What do you guys think? I don't know. This stuff doesn't even get me stoned anymore, you know? And it's, you know, but I mean, you try switching strains, man. You got fucking,
Yeah.
whoever built up a tolerance stuff 5 different jars, much less, you know, 15 different jars, you know?
I almost feel like you can't smoke fast enough to build up tolerance to 5 different strains at the same time.
There's always that 1 jar in the back. The 1 jar in the back. You went back and forth between these 2.
I just found one in the garage just cleaning up the other day.
It blew your mind. You lost it because you were getting bored of it, and then you found it again.
Yeah, I smoked it. It was still good. It's probably 2 years old now.
I have one thing to say.
Jars.
Oh man.
And just like in The Hobbit, 1 jar to rule them all.
Applause for the giant jar collection. True connoisseur.
Well, I just happen to work for a great seed bank with great old school out of Amsterdam. So
So so everyone is heading towards this. Well, as soon as you give anyone choices, you know what I mean? So many people nowadays, the average person is heading towards being a connoisseur. And so
to like craft beer, you know,
yeah,
same kind of deal, you know, like
happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we're going to have things are going to be important. One thing that's going to be important is storage. Am I getting feedback on myself? I got to turn that down. Yeah, so storing cannabis over a period of time is going to be really important, you know, for going forward in the future for cannabis, because obviously keeping 5 jars at a time, when you just went through one at a time, you know, the freshness didn't it was easier to keep. But when you've got 5, and that's why I said jars, you don't have 5 bags anymore, I hope, you know. So we're already into the storage
Well, I
phase.
actually have 5 bags too, because
Okay, somebody does have a few bags, but that's okay. But you know, also storing, you know, cannabis stores that are on the stem. You home growers, you know, don't manicure the shit out of that stuff. Don't cut all the leaves off. Leave a few leaves, you know.
Yes.
Leave a couple of leaves on there because it protects. Supposing your friends come over and squeeze it, maybe it is in the bag, I don't know. Or they want to take it out and squeeze the buds, and oh my God, this stuff smells so good. You know, if it's got a few leaves on the outside, it'll protect against handling, and you can always take those off at the last minute. And if you leave them on the stem, it'll store much longer. You know, if you can leave it on a stick. I imagine in the future it'll be like a deposit. You know, you'll come back with the weight of the stem and the leaves. And I didn't smoke this, you know, and I can roll it over for the weight of my next purchase. Because you know,
do you want to tell people
times are going to change.
to
Prices probably will kind of go down. You know, you'll buy a clone from GreenGenes and grow a 5-pounder in your backyard, and 2 other guys on your block will also have 5-pounders of something else. And so you'll trade, and everybody will be gifting to each other.
Yeah.
I think it will happen. I mean, I don't see it not happening here.
It happens.
It happens. Acceptance. So I think it's going to hurt mostly the big grows. I don't think the good mom and pop, the connoisseurs, especially people who take advantage of the terroir wherever they are, they're local. I think Colorado is an awesome place to grow if you guys can figure out the genetics and the locations and everything like that. I know there's all over the country. There's wonderful places to grow. From as far south as Houston, probably, or maybe even further south if we mess with genetics.
Well, we know to adapt. So if you get a hybrid, real quickly, if you, like you just said, if you grow it out there, it'll adapt after 2 or 3 or 4 grows. You keep using the same strain, it'll adapt to the environment. So
precisely,
you really won't have to do anything.
Exactly.
The plant will do it. The plant will do it. You know, you just have to live and keep using the same strain until you get to where it goes, oh, I like it here.
Yeah.
I'll cut you off, buddy.
Who, me? Was that me? No.
No, I cut Steve off.
Did you want to tell people how to find you? I know you have a website and all. I figure we'd let you go here. We're going to wrap the show up here in the next 10 minutes or so. So make sure we plug you in.
GreenGenesGarden.com. Did you get it right? When I looked on it last, it was the other. It was still the other dude.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about that for a second? I guess there's an imposter.
Yeah. Oh, I think there's a lot of imposters. I got the name sometime in the mid-'70s from my friend Bobby Floyd, who is a jingle singer, a New York City fantastic soul singer, who's not with us anymore. And he, was a studio musician, and he was very knowledgeable about music. And there's a song called "Son of Mr. GreenGenes," which is written by Frank Zappa, and I think it was maybe 1969 or 1970, something like that. And and the spelling is GENES, GreenGenes, as in, so with that spelling instead of the old Mr. GreenGenes. I think there was a show on Captain Kangaroo in the 60s. I hope none of you guys are. Hope you're not that old. But anyways, yeah.
I'm that old.
So my friend gave me that nick in the mid '70s. So anybody else with the name Mr. GreenGenes is definitely an imposter. I'm definitely the original. I've had it since like 1976. So yeah, greengenesgarden.com. So far, there's nothing for sale on there. You can't buy anything, but you could probably learn some stuff. I'm going to upload a lot of writing. I wrote a lot of dribble, hopefully. And my friend, my photographer friend, uploaded some beautiful photographs. There's pretty pictures on there. I know he's got a lot more. I have a lot of friends working on this with me, so it's not really my project entirely. So I don't know what exactly is going on over there. I just have to run back and water some plants. I know that. But man, thanks so much for having me on. You guys are amazing. This is really this is fantastic. This is like my vision of the cannabis lounge. I think we just started the new enlightenment, or you guys already did. I know this is episode 62. I really only watched 53 and listened to 54 and parts of 55. So I've got an awful lot of catching up to do.
Well, that's awesome. I'm excited.
You guys school me up and down.
We love having you. If you want to join us
yeah.
another time, or if
Anytime
you're
you
really
want to
interested
come
in
back,
joining
we're
us
happy
every
to.
week, yeah, let me know. That's how some of these other guys got on here. I know Tommy started off as a guest, and Raingrow started off as a guest, and Roger started off as a guest, and yeah, me and Marty just started this a long time ago, so we picked up panelists along the way.
And we have a blast.
I've already learned so much from a whole bunch of you guys here, so I hope to be able to return it. I mean, I'd love to be on again. This is to me is like, this is the thing, this is I was imagining what would a cannabis lounge be like. This isn't it physically. I went to this a really wonderful place up in where was it? Up in Ventura. It was called Green People. It was an artist colony or something like that, and it was a wonderful thing. My band that I'm in played there, and they had people who were painting and doing all kinds of stuff, and I imagined when I was there that this is exactly what a cannabis lounge. If only they had 3 or 4 bongs on the table there in the middle, in front of the couches and stuff.
Yeah, it would be like this, but we could share, right? We could also talk about this stuff. And I think, like you were talking about, I think it's interesting to think about the other things that people will discuss and ideas that will be, like you talked about the coffee shops being sort of the, intellectual hub of the time. And I think that you would draw a completely different crowd than you would, say, a bar, which is kind of like, our culture's kind of social gathering point now, where I think you would get the people that have been, I don't know, hermetized by prohibition, I guess, can come out of the woodwork and share and talk about other ideas and solving other problems that have nothing to do with cannabis. It's kind of cool to think about that sort of whole other tree of things and ideas taking off from there. That was a cool concept you were touching on earlier, so that was cool. Thanks for that.
Absolutely.
What I wanted to say to you, Mr. Green Gene, is that look at me. I was alive when Kennedy got shot. We lived long enough to look at each other while we were talking to each other on the damn telephone or on the computer. But remember, we were like, that'd be really cool. Here we are. We're looking at each other and having a conversation. How about that? So for all you young whippersnappers out there,
hell yeah. Hold your head.
Yeah, we're old enough to went from party line to here we are having a real party line on Google Hangouts. It's you used to pick up the phone and you hear your neighbor talking. It's like, oh, I got to wait, to use the line because there are 4 houses using one phone line. So the party line, and here we are.
That's right, the party line. You're not old enough to remember that, son. How old are you?
Was the party line? Yeah.
I remember all the late night dating lines you used to see commercials for.
That's not the party line we're talking about, Steve.
Oh, okay.
No.
The party line means you paid for the same for a phone with your neighbors, and you might want to make a phone call, so you'd pick it up, and your neighbor would be talking to somebody to say, "Hey, could you get off the phone so I can make a phone call?"
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
grew up in a very rural
That's
Northern
even-
California,
that's even
like
older.
by the border. And
You can still
so
get
we didn't
that.
have a choice. The only phone we could get was a party line. Like that was it. And so, but luckily, my family, we owned the same stretch. So it was like all of our family shared one party line. And, but it made for some juicy gossip sometimes. I'm sure there was a lot of people listening, a lot of clicking happening on the party line. But that was, let's see, all the way up until probably like 88 or so. I think we still had a party line, maybe 87, somewhere in there. So
You can still get one. You can still actually get one. At least here you can. I mean, I don't think many people do that, but it's still available as an option. But it's funny because you'd pick it up and you go, okay, the neighbor's talking, so you'd hang up. And then
Or if
you'd
you
wait
wanted-
10 or 15 minutes and you'd pick it up again and the neighbor still be gossiping, so you'd hang up. And then you'd finally say, hey, can you get off the damn phone so I can make a phone call?
or the really tricky
Like
one
the
is when you wanted
Kardashians or something.
to call somebody on your phone line. Like if you wanted to call somebody at the other house, like if I wanted
Yeah.
to call my uncle who was on the party line, you had to dial the number and then hang up and then wait for it to ring and then hope that you both pick it up at the same time. It was a pain in the ass.
I lived in a place where all you had to do was dial the first number, like 849 5345. All you had to do was 95345 because there was only 849 prefix in
That
town.
was the same where I grew up in Massachusetts. We
Yep.
were able to dial just the last number, so it's a 5 number to
Yep.
dial your friend
Yep.
locally. Yeah.
BR5, so BR549 just became BR549. That's it.
I remember that. Yeah.
Well, that's for you.
All right. Now that everyone's dated themselves, no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, Steve's like the young genius in the crowd, and yeah.
Hey, old fart grows here, The old fart counts.
That's right. He earned his name.
What have you been up to, Tommy? I know you've been slaving away down there.
Oh, golly, I think I got a little bit of picture out. I gave birth to another machine today. I've had some stuff in my head.
But don't show them the machine.
Okay. So yeah, I did. I made some stainless. I'm playing with some different extraction stuff. Expanding my thinking in that field was really pretty exciting. Working with my son. Oh, most exciting thing in the last little bit here was on a call from work, and while I was on the call from work, my son was attempting to make his first flight with his power motor. It's a big 4-foot blade with a lawnmower on your back of your strapped on like a backpack, and then you have a big parachute and take off.
Parasailing.
Well, he did
Parasailing.
Parasailing, yeah, but with a motor.
Yeah.
So yesterday, Dorian took off for his first flight, and I'm just sitting there hooting and hollering on my call for work, watching him go up over the trees. And he went from our house, he went out over the ocean and came back, and went over Highway 5 and everything like that. Buzzed my car because I took him to a little bit of a field where he could take off, and so he came, buzzed the car and everything. So that was so groovy. I got some pretty awesome kids, and they do some wild stuff, and so I really dug that. It was pretty awesome.
What have you been up to this week, Hogmaster? I guess he's not there. What have you been up to this week, Roger?
No, working on we finally got a little. Oh, there you go. Go ahead, David.
Working on the push I got going that's in flower, and been doing quite a bit of pressing. So just.
No, are you doing flower pressing or bubble?
At the moment, I've just been doing flower pressing, but it's coming out a color.
Nice. Anything else?
Yeah.
And growing and hanging out on the forums, helping people out, man.
Now, are you doing fresh flower for your squishing, or are you doing them? What? How old is the material?
Both actually. We've me and a
Okay.
country who's also on the forum has fresh keef extraction from a fresh plant. So we've been playing with that,
Cool.
extracting with dry ice, of course,
Yep.
and yeah, just playing around with the different ways. I mean, different temperatures. I mean, it's a blast. So much fun and so much freedom having a press and actually being able to do the different things and find out what it'll do. I mean, because it's different at 160 to 190 to 210. I mean, it's just so crazy.
Yep. What about you, Roger? What have you been doing?
I'm getting ready. I've been cleaning up around here. Trying to get some fencing done for my dogs, and think I'm gonna. I'm debating on tearing down my greenhouse and moving it. I'm not sure yet. That's about all I'm doing. Keeping up with administrating ilovegrowingmarijuana.com and that's about it. Fighting with my old lady, because we're going through kind of a divorce thing, but I don't want to digress into that. But that's kind of been monopolizing a lot of my thoughts. Oh, I tell you what. Y'all know I play, I'm a musician and I also do record podcasts and all the stuff. Well, I've got a new killer digital mixer, a Zoom L12, and wait till you guys see what I can do with that thing. I can record shows and put them right back out in digital and master them. And I can sit and record myself or anybody live and live stream it, and it'll actually come out in real time. This is a really killer mixer where it doesn't have a weird lag with the audio video. It should match up. It's a brand new kind of mixer, and I just going to shop for it, and I saw it and I couldn't believe it, so I bought it instead of shopping. And it's brand new, and no one has one really. I mean, people have some. I'm sure they've sold a few, but it's brand new on the market. So in a way, this is a mixer that's unlike anything before it, and it works in interfaces with all the HDMI and live streaming and FireWire and all kind of stuff. Apple, it works best with Apple. It's just fantastic. Got all the interfaces it's got, and the live mixing capabilities. So where you can go and do a live remote and stream right onto the internet and for people to watch. And with really high quality. It's really cool. So that's what I'm doing. I'm still building my studio, and I just had to ship my monitor back because it got here in a UPS truck, and she handed it to me, and the whole top of the box was soaking wet. And I went, what? And she says, oh, it's okay. It's got styrofoam inside. Well, I brought it inside, and then I called the company and sent it back. So my studio might be ready by next Thursday. I'll take you on a little tour. Finally going to have my podcast and music studio I'm in my studio but I'm in the will be the media area or my living room, and then I'll have my office in the back. So it's going to be pretty cool. I think you guys will like it. I'll be able to produce more cannabis related videos and help Steve out with some audio tracks and stuff he's been looking for the show for a while. So I'm really happy to know that I'm this far away from having my studio all together where I can pick up and play music and just record it just like that. So it'll be great.
Cool. What have you been up to, Marty, aside from packing?
Yeah. Yeah, just a bunch of shit related to moving, really. Like we had I mean, I've already known for a while that the guy that sold us this place originally, like 12 years ago or something like that, was a dick. And for multiple reasons, like he had to have like paid off the inspector or like something, but they installed the heating and air conditioning in this house after they couldn't sell it without a central heating and air conditioning system. So it was a brand new house, and they had these little wall heaters, and that was supposed to be good enough. No air conditioning at all, and it gets like, it gets up over 100 degrees consistently in the summertime here. And we're in the bottom of the valley. We get like huge amounts of sun. There's like no trees, no, like it's horizon to horizon where we are right here. So basically nobody wanted to buy it without an air conditioner, right? It's a good sized house, 2-story. And so they couldn't sell it without it. So they installed it afterwards. Well, they had to have like just paid them so cheap or something, but all of the ductwork was just like laying on the ground. Like all of that stuff is supposed to be like, the inspector was like, all that stuff has to be like tied up so you don't get rodent damage. And oh, by the way, now you have rodent damage as well. So it was just like on top of a bunch of other stuff, like the deck they put on the front isn't up to code, and we have to like redo that. So it was like, there's just the paint on this house was terrible. This house is 12 years old, and when we moved in, the paint was terrible, and we should have made them repaint it then. But
And there's a ditch out front. Watch out for the ditch out front.
yeah, everybody's parked in the ditch. Like I said, one guy parked in the ditch twice, but he was really stoned the second time he parked in the ditch. So I have to take partial responsibility for that one. But yeah, there was a lot of stuff about this house. They bought and did a lot of really cheap, sort of messed up stuff. So now I have to drop a whole bunch more money to get all that fixed, because I don't want to pass that on to the next person we're selling the house to. So that's been kind of annoying. So just kind of all, but we did get the house painted. We're gonna have the insulation and stuff fixed underneath. So all that stuff will be done, and still working on getting moved. Hopefully still, it'll push back things a little bit, but we'll still should get moved by like the first couple weeks of December. So before Christmas, we should get moved into the new place. So that'll be exciting, because I'll be able to, instead of having a flower tent, I'll have a dedicated flower room. So that'll be a little more podcast friendly as well. I'll be able to set up a little bit more space in there and do that. And I'll have more plants. So I'll probably end up having 12 plants in there. Once I get moved into the new place, I'll have 12 flowering plants, plus 24 in veg, plus any clones under a foot. No, 2 feet, I think. Something like that. Anyway, so I'll have a lot more room and a lot more space to set up. Right now, I pretty much only, because I'm getting ready to move, I pretty much only have 2 systems set up. And then everything else is kind of torn apart and prepped to move. We had to move a bunch of stuff around so that we could have the inspector inspect everything. And then we had to move stuff around again so the painters could paint the house. And so just a lot of moving right now. There's not really a whole nearly as much gardening as I would like to have happen, but I do have those couple of plants I can look after, and they're in flowers, so that's always the funnest time anyway. So so that's always good. And they'll probably come down in the next couple weeks or so. I think the shishka berry will come down in like a week or so, sometime in the next week or so. It's pretty close to done. And the other one, which we think is Gorilla Glue, it's probably got a little bit longer left. I would say a week to 2 weeks on that one. But it's always fun. Like Brango was talking about, like, you just don't feel like yourself when you don't have plants growing in a system. And I feel like that about outdoor this year. I've been really bummed out not having outdoor plants after having them for 3 years in a row legally. And it was just weird to not do it. So I've been so busy with other stuff too, like all this moving stuff, and then I had to get a job. So because banks like things like reportable income and things like that. So I had to go back and get another IT job so I could get a bank loan so I could buy a house and do all that. So I still run my cloud services business, which I kind of like sold most of it off as I did other gardening activities to supplement my income. And but I still had like the core of it, so I still run that, and then I'm an IT manager during the day. Between that, I garden, and then have all time to try to spend with all my kids. Got the new baby, so shit's pretty busy as of right now. But hopefully by Christmas time, we'll be moved in and just have to deal with the normal stress of shit, and hopefully be able to not have to continue going to my IT job for too much longer anyway. But we'll see how that goes. Hopefully they're not watching my podcast, but if they are, they probably have other concerns as well, so should be all right. But anyway, so yeah, just a lot of random shit going on. You guys saw the garden earlier. If not, if you tuned in late, you can watch the beginning of the podcast and check out the flowers. And they're probably just starting week 8, or no, they're just finishing week 8. So the shishka berry should be done pretty soon. And the other plant, the mystery bud, whatever you want to call it, looks like it's going to go a little bit longer. And I usually go a little bit longer as opposed to early if I can. They don't really seem to be having any issues or anything like that. So I did cut a couple little tester nugs. So I have one here I smoked earlier. I don't know if you guys can see that or not.
Oh yeah.
Cut that a couple of days ago. Just one of the little lower buds. So it's not. That's a shishka berry, and it's still not quite done yet. But I did cut that a few days ago too. So I don't know, just keeping an eye on them. Got the old jeweler's loop out, watching the trichomes, and yeah, feed the fish every other day. So I cut back a lot during flower, which you guys, we've talked about that before. So pretty much on the same schedule there. And with the larger dual root zone pots, I've only top dressed twice during flower, at the beginning of flower, and then like week 4. So aside from that, I feed the fish every other day and just check on the plants. Everything else, because the water is always cycling, so I don't have to worry about any of that. Top the water off, balance the pH, obviously. But for the most part, I want these plants to pull everything out. Like he was talking about pulling everything out of the pots. I want these 2 plants to basically pull as much nutrients as they can out of the system without adding more in late into flower. So you can call it flushing, or you can call it, you can call it whatever you want. It's not adding nutrients in flower towards the end to allow them to finish up the way they normally. So that's kind of the stage that I'm at now. So there's not a lot of maintenance to doing it. So there you go.
We had a question from chat about how to handle high pH. It depends how high it is. If it's 7.8 or below, you want to use phosphoric acid, and if it's 8.2 or 7.8 or above, I would recommend muriatic acid until you bring it down enough to use phosphoric. Just depends on what crops you're running. If you're running cannabis, then definitely use muriatic acid. Knock it down to 7.6 or 7.8.
Kind of depends on the size of your tanks too, right?
Increase your fish feed a little bit too, unless they're in flower.
Increase your fish feed, or add labs or ferments that you've driven the pH down usually to around sub 4. And you can just add those right to your media beds or into your sum tank. If you want to change the pH, make sure you're adding those to one of your tanks as opposed to your media beds. But you can use labs. Those do take time to create though, so it's not like you can go to you can't go to the store and buy labs. You can buy like inoculants and stuff like that, but haven't seen that in a grocery store. Or I guess you could get like activated EM1. That would be kind of the same thing, right, Steve?
Kind of,
muted?
sort of, not really.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of an
It
off-the-shelf
says-
thing that would be
It
close,
says it's
but
in flower. It says in flower, so I would use muriatic acid if you're in flower already and they're an 8.2. If you don't knock that pH down soon, your flowers are going to be totally screwed.
right,
Yeah, you're gonna.
right. So
That's way off.
anything you do with microbes to lower your pH is going to take way longer than acid. That's just the bottom line. If you want to do it fast, you're going to need acidity. I mean, you're talking about the pH scale, which is the level of acidity. So there's only
Now,
one
is
way
this-
to get more acidic, is to add something
We're
acidic.
talking about aquaponics. Is he talking about
So,
in
yeah, aquaponics.
or
Yep.
huh?
It said it
Yeah.
says, can you use crushed oyster cells in a bag and dip into res for pH balance? You can use them if your pH is too low, but oyster shells will not lower your pH at all. They will raise your pH, and if they're in there too long, they'll start sucking phosphorus. So
You could use like fulvic acid or granular humic acid that still has fulvic. You could use it in like a tea bag in the way you're talking about using oyster shell.
Yep.
But that's still probably going to take like
Peat-
days as opposed
peat
to
would also-
phosphoric acid, which you could do in hours if
Yep.
you really wanted to.
well, if you drop it too quick, you'll kill your fish too. You know,
That's what I was trying to bring up.
It
That's
was-
only if you care about your fish, Steve. We've been over
This
this.
is true.
That's why I have goldfish.
The other thing you could do is put a bunch of peat moss in there. You could run like a pond filter with just filled with a bunch of peat moss and maybe a screen. You can do that too. I've done that to drop the fish tank and off in the water.
Oops.
That was,
Sorry. Was that me?
that's a,
Hey, quiet.
No, let them yell. It's fine.
There's some youth. We have some youth in the group.
all right.
We'll be all right. We'll live.
That's son of Mr. GreenGenes right there.
All right.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about was the consideration over when you were talking about going from 8.2 and using muriatic acid and dropping down. What you guys always taught is that you still have to be careful not to kill your fish. But then again, if it's your crop or your fish, the fish are cheaper than the crop.
Well, I suppose that depends a little bit on your fish, but for the most part, that's probably true. And I've actually lowered with phosphoric acid or granular humic acid that still has fulvic. So it has to be like the extracted mine stuff as opposed to the lab created stuff, because they've already extracted the fulvic acid off of the lab created stuff. So we did a whole thing on Steve, do you remember when we did that whole like fulvic acid spin-off thing? I don't remember what episode it was, but
Yeah, we did a whole. Someone came on and talked all about it. I think it was the dude from Maine from Kingdom Aquaponics, but I could be wrong.
yeah, so we did go off on that a little bit, but basically you can use, a few different acids to change your pH pretty fast. Now it doesn't, if you're changing your pH fast, that's what the fish are really going to, not like. So regardless of what you use to change it in a hurry, the fish are probably, there's not a fast way to change the pH that the fish are still going to like, I guess is kind of what I'm trying to get to.
Stress them or kill them.
You can't move it more than 0.5 pH per day. And remember, the pH is
Right.
logarithmic, so that's a big jump.
So it's
Yeah,
all a matter of whether you could fix the problem. Like if you're at 8.2, you're going to have to fix that pH problem in faster than 8 or 10 days. You're going to have to sacrifice to get the fish out or whatever you got to do. I mean, is that an alternative? What do you say? Alternative,
Well,
take your fish into an alternative reservoir where you deal with the pH in this recirculating system?
you can do that. I've done that before. You can also get, if you already have a secondary system, then you can put a bunch of water in, pH balance that water, and then do a water change with that water. And that will still gradually change it. But obviously, no matter how you do it, it's still a big change for the fish, right? No matter what your method is, if you're taking the fish out of high pH water, right? If they're already in the 8.2 water, let's say, and you just take them out and you plop them into 7 water, then your pH change for them is immediate, right? So just moving them to a different thing and then back just makes their change immediate. So I don't know if that
more or
like
less,
makes sense.
more or less, I would maybe put them in the same water at first, but that would allow you to address the reservoir in the recirculating system that your plants are in.
Right.
Because your plants are going to be, unless it's in veg, this happens. If you're in flower with a bunch of buds, it's definitely, the plants are worth a lot more than the fish. So
Right.
I'm saying you take them out, you take water out of the reservoir and put the fish in another tub and start adjusting. I guess it still would be a big shock, but you'd be able to work on your main res a lot faster and try to keep your fish alive as you're bringing it along and still maintain a nitrogen balance with the water that was already in there without the fish.
Right, without the fish, right.
Not lose either one by having that. You know, I mean, it's a stretch, I guess. I mean, it's just trying to think outside the box.
Yeah, you could just decouple them, right? And then you would, obviously you couldn't decouple them very long unless your secondary system had some other type of filtration. So that's why I was saying if you had a secondary system and you could fill it up and adjust it to whatever pH you wanted to be and then do a slow water change with it over time, you could do that, but you still have to change it slowly. And so I was thinking, Steve, you probably ran into this a lot in the pet industry, right? How did you guys handle, like if you needed to do a big change, did you take fish out? Do you
For pH, you mean, or what?
Yeah, if you're gonna, like, you need to do a pH swing, you have 8.2, and you've already got fish that are in there at 8.2, and you want to bring it down. Would you take them out? I mean, it seems like no matter what, you have to slowly, like, gradually.
You have to do it slowly. You can't get around the issue. The issue is with the biology of the fish. There's no. You shouldn't move it. Ideally, move it more than 1 point per week and half a point per day. But you can push that. You know, you just might lose a few.
Right.
Like getting the bends, right? Like if you come up with too much nitrogen boiling in your blood.
Well, no, it has to do with their kidneys and a couple of other things, but it just can't handle it. The quickest way to kill a fish is a quick pH change or quick temperature change, or both. So.
And that's why generally we deal with pH and stuff like that before we add the water to the system.
Right. So if you are just topping off a tank, and you have a secondary system, then that's, you know, once it's already adjusted, that's, you know, keeping it there is, you know, going to be the easier thing to do. Is kind of what he's hinting at. We've talked about that a lot too, is that if you don't let your systems get too low in water, you have to add a whole bunch more. Or let's say, because that's where I am, I have high carbonate water, right? So I have well water, it's high pH, and it already has a lot of buffer in it. So we've talked about that a lot. But the same thing could happen if you were, let's say you went a long time without supplementing, and then you supplemented a lot at one time and you brought your pH up too fast. Would be another thing that could happen in that same scenario. So if you're not keeping things stable, if you're not keeping up on things and you go through large swings, then that's not going to be ideal. So you want to keep up on your, especially if you're adding water that's high in pH, you can kind of like use that as your buffer. Whereas if you're constantly dealing with like RO water or some type of city water that's been stripped of all of its nutrients, and you're constantly have to adding stuff back in, all of that just becomes, you know, kind of a balancing act, and staying up on it is a lot easier than when you get lazy and you have to go through larger swings. It takes time to fix them.
Yep. Alrighty. Well, it's been a pretty long show. I'll go over what I went over real quick, and then we'll get going. I ended up Marty and I taught the class over this past weekend. It was a lot of fun. We had some really cool guests in the class, some city council members and some other stuff. So Marty and I got a chance to vent our frustrations with in a positive manner with some city council members that actually will make a difference with. So that was really awesome. I know we rant and rave about that kind of stuff all the time. It was nice to do the opposite of that. So that was really cool. And then I've been just working on a bunch of stuff. Ed Rosenthal is going to be on the show soon. I'm going to go spend some more time with him next week. Him and I are working on a project that I can't announce yet, but we're going to be working on a project together, him and I. So that'll be awesome. What else? Oh, if you guys are interested, check us out. We're going to be meeting the anniversary. I guess I forget what year anniversary it is for the uh, Cannabis Club up the Northwest Cannabis Club in Portland. I'll be up there next Saturday. If anyone's interested in coming to hang out, it's also where we had the Dude Grows show Nug Throwdown. I'll also be there with Charlie Schultz and a couple of the other cool Aquaponic guys. The Aquaponics Association's convention is next Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If you're interested, I'll be talking there as well as Ken, Charlie, a whole bunch of other people. Nick Sandoval will be there, a whole bunch of big names. So if you're looking to get a really cool, experience with a bunch of aquaponic experts all in one weekend, definitely be something worth checking out. And what else? Yeah, that's next weekend. And then if you guys are going out to Vegas, I will be at the MJ BizCon show in Las Vegas on the 15th, 16th, and 17th of November. And then I'll be at Emerald Cup. Tommy and I got an entry. Well, if all goes well, we'll have our entry into the cup. And we're going to throw down with the powder and with our oil. So it'll be a lot of fun. I'm sure we'll get content from all of those events.
Cool. That's all.
Awesome.
Yep. And I don't think we have any more classes the rest of the year. We'll have another class in January. So, but aside from that, thanks everyone for joining us. Anyone else have anything else they want to say before we get going?
Oh, just big thanks to our guest tonight.
Oh yeah, thanks a
Very
lot
good.
again for Mr.
Awesome. Thank
GreenGenes
you.
for joining us.
Oh yes.
And good to see Brain Grow back.
Sorry about
Yeah, it's
the technical-
really good to be back.
Yeah, it was nice having Brain Grow back again. Haven't seen you in a
Yes.
minute.
Yeah, it's sure been. It's been a couple minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, love having you back, buddy.
Appreciate it, guys. Appreciate the love.
All right, thanks, guys. We'll see you guys next week. I'm gonna have, unless Ed can join us next week, we'll have Spectrum King's gonna join us. They have some new lights that they're gonna show off, and
Cool.
I might try to get us another a second guest as well. We'll see kind of how it goes. If not,
Spectrum King's usually kind of a show all by themselves.
Yeah.
they usually kind of take over the whole episode, so we might just let them do their thing. If you guys haven't had a chance to check them out before, check out the 2 episodes they were on before. Man, they were really good at lighting episodes. If you have any lighting questions, make sure you rack them up. And working on some other cool guests. We're gonna get some gentlemen from the Dennis Perone Foundation. They help with legalization bills and other things across the country. They're going to be joining us on the show, and we're going to have some other cool people working on trying to get. I got a chance to hang out with Steve D'Angelo the other day. We're going to try and get him on the show, and we'll see who I meet out in Vegas to get to come on the show as well. So, got some surprises in the works.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
Night.